Chapter 901. In a king-level sect like the Moonhowl sect, there was a portal that could send people to Huangquan Spring. Then, in an emperor-level sect, it was not a big deal to have a portal that could send people to Huangquan Spring. Therefore, after Lu Feng nodded lightly, he followed the elder to the hall and quietly waited for Lin Yu to appear. However, after waiting for a long time, Lin Yu did not appear. There were 7 figures that entered. Lu Feng recognized 5 of them. Because of these 5 figures, 3 of them were the top 5 in the previous grand competition. The other 2 were the 2 disciples of Lin Langtian who waited beside Lu Feng's room and specially served Lu Feng for a period of time. Seeing this scene, Lu Feng understood slightly. He knew that it was definitely not just him and Lin Yu who were going to the supreme holy grounds this time. Every 100 years, a continent would produce a certain number of quotas. Previously, Lin Langtian had taken control of half of them, which meant that there were 10 spots. In order to facilitate this grand competition, they had once taken out 5 quotas to reward the top 5. Now, it seemed that it was time for them to fulfill their promise. Thinking of this, Lu Feng did not have any doubts. Looking at the respectful and even reverent expressions around him, Lu Feng could only sigh helplessly. He knew that he was now an existence that these people could not even look up to, even if he could chat with these people before. But now it was almost impossible. After all, in the eyes of these people, he was already a mythical figure. Lu Feng continued to wait, and this time, another person entered the hall. Looking at that person, Lu Feng's expression was very calm. However, that existence revealed a very complicated expression. After a while, he finally came to Lu Feng's side. After a slight hesitation, he finally opened his mouth and said, "Young Master Lu, previously I was arrogant." Lu Feng was more familiar with the person who came. He was Tian Hui. After being severely injured by Lu Feng, Tian Hui fell into a coma. Fortunately, in order to not delay the trip to the holy grounds, the Sky Immortal Venerable personally helped him to recover. He also finally knew how powerful Lu Feng was after he woke up. Indeed, controlling the power of the world made him feel that he was no longer afraid of anything and was already lawless. However, everything that happened afterward made him understand that Lu Feng was not really evenly matched with him. Everything that Lu Feng did was just to use him as a whetstone to improve himself. That was all. After hearing this, the biggest emotion that he felt was regret, but there was no resentment appeared. Because he knew that Lu Feng was indeed qualified. This was something that he could not refute. After finding out that Lu Feng was also participating in the Holy Land's mission, Tian Hui had hesitated whether he should go or not. But in the end, he still came. After all, such an opportunity was too rare. After hearing Tian Hui's apology, Lu Feng just waved his hand gently. Lu Feng did not have a good impression of Tian Hui. However, Lu Feng did not hate him as much now. In the past, he had only taken action because Tian Hui had hurt his friend. Now, he had gotten his revenge. Furthermore, Lin Yu had also benefited a lot from this matter. Of course, the most important point was that Tian Hui was actually a rather pitiful existence. Back then, Lin Yu's appearance had almost robbed him of any hope of advancement. Actually, under such circumstances, it was understandable that Tian Hui would vent his anger on Lin Yu and explode. Of course, this was just his imagination. It was not something that Lu Feng could understand. Although Lu Feng couldn't become friends with Tian Hui, he wouldn't mock and ridicule him like before, nor would he try to suppress him. Lu Feng nodded his head gently in response to Tian Hui. Tian Hui's eyes lit up when he saw Lu Feng's attitude. In his opinion, as long as Lu Feng didn't reject him directly and didn't leave immediately, it would be fine. Now that Lu Feng had actually responded to him, Tian Hui felt a lot more at ease. He really did not want to offend an existence like Lu Feng, and he did not dare to do so. At the moment, there was a slight silence in the hall. Lu Feng did not say anything, so these people naturally did not say anything. Many people who wanted to get close to him naturally did not say anything when they saw Lu Feng's slightly closed eyes. Just like that, everyone waited quietly. Time passed quickly. Half a day had passed. Finally, Lin Yu appeared. When he saw that everyone was waiting for him, Lin Yu revealed a slightly embarrassed expression. Sorry, I just came out of seclusion and had some things to sort out. I was busy sorting them out. Sorry to have kept everyone waiting. He was different from Lu Feng. Lu Feng could ignore these people, but Lin Yu could not. Of course, in response to Lin Yu's apology, these people repeatedly said that it was fine. After all, such a short period of time was nothing to these people. At this moment, Tian Hui, who had been silent, finally stood up and came to Lin Yu's side. Looking at Tian Hui in front of him, Lin Yu was also slightly silent. He also knew the reason why Tian Hui had been able to severely injure him previously. However, all of this was not arranged by him. Therefore, being resented for no reason, and even being challenged to severely injure him, made Lin Yu really angry. However, after this transformation, Lin Yu had seen through it a lot. Looking at Lin Yu, Tian Hui hesitated for a moment. In the end, he took a deep breath and said slowly, Lin Yu, it was my fault previously. I am sorry. Lin Yu looked at Tian Hui strangely. He did not expect Tian Hui to apologize to him. Now, he had become a peak true immortal. In terms of aptitude, he was almost a peak emperor-level existence. It could be said that he could look down on Tian Hui in all aspects. However, strength was another matter. He was not Tian Hui, who knew that others could not fight against him, but still insisted on making them his opponent. Lin Yu really could not do such a thing. Now that Tian Hui had apologized, Lin Yu naturally felt relieved from the bottom of his heart. He looked at Tian Hui with a smile and nodded lightly. Let bygones be bygones. This time, they were heading to the supreme holy grounds. There would be countless unpredictable situations there. Moreover, everyone knew that there were monstrous geniuses as strong as emperors in the supreme holy grounds. In fact, there would be many of them. After all, the supreme holy grounds were one of the 3 great holy grounds that had been passed down since ancient times. No one could say for sure how many experts and overlords there were in the supreme holy ground. There are countless monstrous geniuses and monsters in the supreme holy grounds. In the current world, the Jade Emperor Heavenly Sect is the #1 Emperor-level sect in the Jade Emperor Heavenly Continent. It is said that there is an ancient, immortal venerable overseeing it. In the eyes of many, its strength has definitely surpassed the limits of an Emperor-level sect. However, such a powerful sect still does not dare to provoke the supreme holy grounds after accumulating strength for 3 whole eras. This is the prestige of the 3 great holy grounds. Lin Yu told everything he knew to Lu Feng as they walked on the path filled with nature. As for Lu Feng, he just kept nodding his head. The supreme holy grounds is one of the 3 great holy grounds. The existence of the 3 great holy grounds is too extreme. It is impossible to go against them. This is the terrifying part of the 3 great holy grounds. Long ago, in the desolate era, there was a sect that flourished for a period of time. It was considered the peak of all the sects outside of the holy grounds in history. However, it was such a powerful sect that almost had the status of an overlord on 3 continents. When they provoked the primal chaos holy grounds, one of the 3 great holy grounds, they were instantly obliterated. From then on, no other sect dared to provoke the 3 great holy grounds. Lu Feng had vaguely heard of the sect that Lin Yu mentioned. A long time ago, there was a terrifying emperor-ranked sect known as the Primordial Sect. They were truly powerful, causing others to tremble in fear. It was rumored that there were 2 epic immortal sovereigns in the Primordial Sect, and there were no less than 10 epic immortal sovereigns at the Perfection Realm. Among them, the number of epic immortal sovereigns was shockingly high, reaching over 100. As for immortal kings, there were no less than 1,000. With such a lineup, it would be extremely easy for them to wipe out the entire primal universe. However, such a powerful sect was annihilated in an instant when the primal chaos holy grounds used their resources. One had to admit that the three great holy grounds had a strong foundation. Well, not far from here, we will reach the supreme holy grounds. Just as Lu Feng and Lin Yu were conversing, the person leading the way suddenly spoke. The group of 20 people had directly arrived at the periphery of the supreme holy grounds through the transportation array. The supreme holy grounds were located on the celestial islands overseas. Its location had never been determined. It was a floating spacetime continent, so it could only be reached through the transportation array. And the place where they were transported to was not the exact center. They had only arrived at the periphery of the island. Vaguely, they could still see the surrounding death whirlpool that was filled with the smell of endless devouring. Those were the natural barriers in the primal chaos ocean. Those who were not immortal kings were not even qualified to cross, and even if they had the strength of an immortal king, they might not be able to pass through smoothly. Along the way, the holy grounds had asked them to walk. Actually, there was no need to say this because flying was completely prohibited in the supreme holy ground. If one wanted to fly here, one had to have the strength of an immortal king at least. Although they could not fly, and the celestial islands overseas were incomparably vast, these people were very powerful. It was true that they were monstrous, but they were almost considered monstrous geniuses of the younger generation. Hence, the extent of their strength was also unimaginable. The speed at which they walked was not slow at all. In just 2 days, under the guidance of the person leading the way, they had already arrived in front of an indescribable celestial realm. Seeing this celestial realm, Lu Feng exhaled softly. Unlike the others who were amazed, he felt the most complicated. It's actually a celestial realm. This was really a celestial realm. It was a celestial realm that belonged to the primal immortal devil era. Previously, when he was in Tongtian Futu, Lu Feng saw many historical memories regarding the primal immortal devil era, and among them, there was the existence of this celestial realm. There were only 8 celestial realms in the primal immortal devil era. Chapter 902. These 8 places were the final 8 holy lands, and they were the residences of the 8 sovereigns. Who would have thought that there would be an immortal realm here? Soon, Lu Feng noticed the difference. It was different from the immortal realm he had seen in his memories. Although the immortal realm here was also an illusory legend, it lacked a certain feeling. Lu Feng couldn't describe what that feeling was, but it was what he felt. It seems that with the end of the primordial immortal demon era, the wondrous immortal realm finally disappeared completely. Even if the future generations wanted to imitate it, they wouldn't be able to do so. Sigh, it was a sorrowful sigh. I wonder if we'll be able to survive this calamity. Lu Feng had already thought of many possibilities, including the possibility of a calamity in the future. Of course, that was just his guess. Lu Feng couldn't be sure. He would have to wait until he finished reading the last memory. The group walked into the immortal realm. There wasn't any architectural style here. All living things lived directly between heaven and earth. However, the spiritual qi here, the concentration of immortal qi, was terrifying to an extreme degree. Lu Feng believed that if one cultivated here, it wouldn't take long for them to become trash. Under the transformation of the immortal qi, they could quickly become monstrous talent. No wonder the 3 sacred lands are so attractive. Cultivating here is indeed twice the result with half the effort. Heaven-defying, Lu Feng finally understood why the primordial sect, with its immense strength, had been destroyed so easily by the sacred lands. In a cultivation holy land like this, anyone can become a monster or an expert. So, how powerful are those who cultivate here every day? Yi Futian asked. I can't believe it. seeing the various expressions on the faces of the monstrous geniuses behind him, the guide chuckled softly. He nodded and pointed to the only building in front of them. It was an ancient structure that looked like a door. The desolate aura coming from it made one's heart palpitate. All the monstrous geniuses who enter here have to undergo a qualification test and identity verification. And this heaven and earth gate is the place for testing. What you need to do is to walk into it and persevere through the trials. When the time comes, the heaven and earth sect will naturally recognize your qualifications. Hearing this, many monsters nodded respectfully. At this moment, after entering this place, these monsters had already retracted their arrogance completely. They naturally understood that this was not their sect, and they could not be presumptuous. Moreover, there were countless monstrous geniuses like them here, and they had no chance to be arrogant. Therefore, these people were all well-behaved. Soon, one after another, the monstrous geniuses entered and began the test. The Heaven and Earth sect could only test one demonic being at a time. Therefore, the others were all waiting quietly. Seemingly having sensed the unusual movement of the world, countless monstrous geniuses and geniuses gathered in this place. Unknowingly, over 10,000 people had gathered around them. Seeing this, Lu Feng's eyes moved slightly. He realized that the weakest among them was actually the King of Slaughter, and Supreme Kings, which were Emperor-level monstrous geniuses. There were definitely no less than 1,000 of them here. Smiling slightly helplessly, Lu Feng really did not know what to say anymore. When 5 Supreme Kings are gathered, the Battle of Kings can start. In the primal universe, the Battle of Kings has only experienced it a few times. But here, there are actually more than 1,000 Supreme Kings. In one holy land, there were already more than 1,000 Supreme Kings. Then what about the 3 Holy Lands? Furthermore, Lu Feng also believed that the Supreme Monarchs here were definitely not all of them. Seeing the shock on the faces of the newcomers, the guide from before smiled lightly. These are all the pinnacle monstrous geniuses that our Supreme Holy Land has accumulated over countless years. Of course, although what you see is shocking, the real situation is not like this. When you arrived, you should have felt it too. Training in this place would provide a terrifying boost to one's aptitude. Most of the Emperor-level monstrous geniuses you see were actually just ordinary Emperor-level monstrous geniuses in the past. That's how they slowly cultivated here. Hearing this, Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief. If there were really more than 1,000 Supreme Kings born directly, it would really be too shocking. After all, Supreme Kings were great beings who could cultivate to the immortal master level. As long as they did not die, with the help and cultivation of countless resources, they could definitely become flowing time immortal masters. The surrounding people all looked at the Heaven and Earth gate quietly. Just as the guide had said, cultivating here could improve one's aptitude. However, if one's qualifications were better when they arrived, then the benefits they would receive in the future would be greater. Obviously, these people were all competitors here. They were very happy to see the strength of their opponents in advance. The first one to walk in was a pinnacle Emperor-level monstrous genius. Not long after he entered, the entire Heaven and Earth gate was dyed in a bright red color. This kind of red was almost monstrous, and it was unbearable to the eyes. At this moment, many of the spectating monstrous geniuses let out a sigh of relief. A pinnacle Emperor-level monstrous genius. In the future, it won't be long before he becomes an Emperor-level monstrous genius. Moreover, he will be one of the stronger ones among the Emperor-level monstrous geniuses. Many people sighed. They knew that in the future, more and more opponents would appear. Finally, following the continuous sighs, it was Tian Hui's turn to enter the stage. It hadn't been long since Tian Hui entered, but at this moment, the Heaven and Earth gate had changed color. At first, it was red, an extremely enchanting red. However, in the next moment, the red began to change into an endless deep color. That was black. It was also at this moment that countless gasps were heard. These people naturally knew what this represented. Which continent is this monstrous genius from? There are so many of them. The monstrous geniuses they brought this time are really terrifying. In the future, they will definitely be peerless opponents on our path. But it's good that there are such monstrous geniuses. If we want to advance, it will definitely be more convenient. It seems that this monstrous genius used to be a pinnacle emperor-level existence. Later on, I don't know what he experienced, but he actually became an emperor-level monstrous genius. However, becoming an emperor-level monstrous genius is becoming an emperor-level monstrous genius. In the future, his future is really limitless. I'm afraid that the Sacred Land will prioritize nurturing him in the future and give him sufficient resources. They will let him reach our level in the shortest time possible and compete with us. Fighting, at any time and any place, was the fastest way for monstrous geniuses to improve. Obviously, everyone understood this principle. Therefore, these people naturally knew that although the competition in the future would be more intense, once they clashed, they would gain more benefit. Moreover, there would be more opponents and opportunities to clash in the future. These people could be said to be suffering and happy at the same time. Soon, Tianhui appeared and came to the side of Lu Feng and the others. After Lin Yu took one last look at these people, he slowly walked into the gate. Like Tianhui, after Lin Yu entered, all the changes were the same. However, the difference was that at the last moment, Lin Yu's dark color was obviously deeper. Everyone knew that Lin Yu had walked further on the path of an emperor-level monstrous genius. Not bad, really not bad. I didn't expect that the monstrous geniuses brought by the Yellow Spring continent this time would be so shocking. 2 emperor-level monstrous geniuses. This is rare in the entire history. The guide sighed softly with a satisfied look on his face. Finally, he looked at Lu Feng with a kind of expectation and contemplation in his eyes. I can feel that among this group, you seem to be the leader. Moreover, this kind of respect is definitely not because you have the highest cultivation level among them. You are the last to take the test, so in their hearts, you must be the true number 1 monstrous genius. Lu Feng, you are called Lu Feng, right? I am really looking forward to seeing how heaven-defying your aptitude will be. Hearing this, Lu Feng just smiled softly. Then, with a step, he arrived in front of the gate. Looking at this gate, Lu Feng vaguely felt a kind of terrifying majesty. This majestic existence seemed to want to completely subdue him. Who was Lu Feng? He was the Emperor, Lu Feng. In this world, only he could suppress others. He was the eternal Emperor of this world. How could he tolerate being suppressed? Therefore, in the next moment, even though he didn't know whether he was a match for this gate, he still chose to use his powerful aura and started to fight against this gate. Many people looked at the constantly shaking gate in confusion. They looked at Lu Feng, who had been standing quietly in front of the gate all this time. They were a little dazed. They really didn't know what had happened to make the two of them stand there in a daze. However, although these people didn't understand, it didn't mean that everyone else didn't understand. The previous guide's expression changed slightly at first. Then, it started to change violently. In the end, it even changed dramatically. He looked at Lu Feng, his eyes filled with disbelief. As a genius who had led an era, he had seen too many existences. He had come into contact with too many existences. Such a scene had happened before. And every time it happened, it was a truly invincible genius. However, no matter how talented they were, they still succumbed to the majesty of the heaven and earth gate in the end. However, Lu Feng in front of him was obviously resisting. He was using his own will to resist the great heaven and earth gate that had been passed down from the immortal devil era. How is this possible? For a moment the aura fluctuated, causing the surrounding geniuses to prostrate on the ground instantly. Everyone knew and understood that as the guide of the sacred ground, the one who had not changed for an entire era, his strength was definitely not weak. However, they absolutely couldn't imagine that his strength wasn't weak, but it was absolutely impossible for him to be this powerful. This is the majesty of an immortal venerable. This is definitely the majesty of an immortal venerable. I once felt it from immortal venerable Lin Long. This is definitely the majesty of an immortal venerable at the peak of the complete immortal venerable realm. In fact, it even gave me a feeling of the microcosm era. This guide is actually about to transform and become an immortal venerable at the epoch era, an existence at the level of the immortal master of the sacred ground. The guide didn't see or feel the shock of the surrounding people. At this moment, there was only Lu Feng in his eyes, only the constantly shaking heaven and earth gate. Finally, when the intensity reached its peak, the heavens and the earth began to tremble. Chapter 903. The entire overseas immortal islands were shaken. Countless people were shocked. They simply couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. For these people, the overseas island of immortals was a symbol of the spirit and the era. Their existence would never be shaken. Even the powerful primordial sect was annihilated in a moment. But now, the place was in turmoil. This was simply unbelievable. Finally, someone seemed to have found the source of the turmoil. He stretched out his arm and pointed in the direction of Lu Feng and the Heaven and Earth sect. It's there. It must be the turmoil of the Heaven and Earth sect that caused the entire overseas immortal island to be shaken. Everyone was horrified. They looked at the Heaven and Earth sect in shock and confusion. These people really didn't understand why such a scene would appear here, why such a frightening scene would appear here. The Heaven and Earth sect, which was peaceful just a moment ago, suddenly seemed to have gone crazy. The turbulence made people's souls tremble. Could it be that young man who caused it? But it can't be. He didn't do anything. Lu Feng was only standing in front of the Heaven and Earth sect. He did not even enter. Therefore, in the eyes of the people, it should not be Lu Feng. But other than Lu Feng, they could not think of any other possibility. At this moment, many people turned their attention to the guide who had an imposing aura and had almost refined the essence of the era. These people understood that the only person who could make the decision now was the guide. Unfortunately, the guide did not notice their turmoil. In his eyes there was only Lu Feng. He did not even look at the Heaven and Earth sect. Gradually, these people finally understood something. When they looked at Lu Feng, their expressions were filled with boundless shock. These people did not understand what kind of existence could cause the Heaven and Earth sect to move like this and cause such a disturbance in the space-time. The monstrous geniuses of the Yellow Spring continent who had just been tested looked bitter and amazed. They naturally knew Lu Feng's identity. But these people did not expect that as the ultimate king, Lu Feng would cause such a stir when he just arrived. Emperor, as expected of an emperor, Lin Yu sighed softly. Although he had undergone a metamorphosis and become a monstrous emperor realm genius, he understood that the gap between him and Lu Feng was just too big. Lu Feng's strength had reached the peak of the emperor realm. Even though he was about to break through to the immortal king realm, he knew that the gap between him and Lu Feng was just too big. The light in Lu Feng's eyes had already reached its peak. As of this moment, Lu Feng did not retreat. Even though he was facing the boundless heaven and earth, he did not back down in the slightest. Because he was Lu Feng, Emperor Lu Feng. He wasn't like the emperors of the mortal world who respected the heavens and earth and worshipped the god. He was a true great emperor of the universe, an unparalleled great emperor of the universe. How could he possibly submit? Vaguely, Lu Feng felt that there seemed to be a forbidden power in the depths of his soul that was constantly shattering. A strong will kept awakening in his soul, causing his pressure to become more and more terrifying and powerful. This was not a strong power, but a power hidden in the depths of his heart. It belonged to him, the noblest power that had surpassed the destiny bestowed upon him. His nobleness surpassed destiny. It was the most important fate. Therefore, at this moment, when he was truly suppressed, it finally woke up. At the last moment, a shocking aura was produced. Lu Feng's body began to tremble, but he did not retreat. He stood firmly on the spot. His eyes flashed with a radiance that made people's hearts palpitate. Blood slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. Finally, a shocking roar came from Lu Feng's mouth. At this moment, the phantom of the great emperor was born behind him. After passing through layers of fog of reincarnation, returning from the unknown and hazy other side, bringing the hope and faith of all living beings, it had finally arrived. This was an emperor, a true unparalleled emperor. In an instant, Lu Feng entered the realm of an emperor. He looked down at the hundreds of millions of heavens, suppressing the reincarnation of the era. This was the greatness of history, the dignity of an emperor. The gate of heaven and earth shook once again. It was connected to the entire supreme immortal domain. Its shaking naturally caused the entire supreme immortal domain to shake. Finally, in the distant area, countless figures began to fly over. Flying, it was flying. In this supreme immortal holy land, flying was completely forbidden. Of course, this prohibition referred to a certain level, and some existences could fly in the void. But the minimum standard for flying was immortal king. Therefore, in the three holy lands, if one saw flying existences, then they must be immortal kings. Obviously, the terrifying number of existences flying over from afar were all immortal kings. Countless immortal kings filled the sky. They came in front of the gate of heaven and earth. Sensing that Lu Feng was resisting the gate of heaven and earth, their eyes were filled with countless strange expressions. Although they were amazed by Lu Feng's strength, to them, the gate of heaven and earth was their supreme immortal holy land. It was the symbol of the three holy lands and also one of their foundations. They could not allow the gate of heaven and earth to continue shaking. This would affect the foundation of their holy land. Therefore, no matter what, they had to take action and stabilize it first. In the next moment, an invincible immortal venerable was ready to take action and suppress Lu Feng. However, just as he was about to take action, a figure appeared in front of him. Seeing this figure, a strange look flashed across the immortal venerable's eyes. Then, without any hesitation, he bowed slightly. "Greetings, primogenitor." The one who appeared was the guide, and the one who was addressed as primogenitor was also him. The guide was actually the primogenitor of this immortal venerable. The appearance of this voice made many people's eyes strange, filled with an indescribable color. In the face of this, the guide did not change his expression. What he saw was still Lu Feng, who was resisting the gate of heaven and earth. Finally, the immortal venerable thought of something and revealed a trace of anxiety. He said, "Primogenitor, now that he is shaking the foundation of our holy land, we can't let him continue like this. I beseech primogenitor to take action and stop him." The guide was still looking at Lu Feng and did not answer. Seeing this scene and feeling the shaking of the heavens and earth, the immortal venerable finally could not wait any longer. He gritted his teeth fiercely and struck out a shocking force that trembled the world. However, the moment this force appeared, it was annihilated. Looking at the existence who made the move, the immortal venerable's eyes were filled with shock and confusion. "Primogenitor, the one who made the move was the guide. He was the one who destroyed the killing force of the immortal venerable." This time, the guide did not remain silent. He turned around and looked behind him, into the distance. Finally, his voice rang out slowly at this moment. "Senior brother, could it be that it's time?" Many people were slightly stunned. Among them, almost all of them knew the guide. This was because most of the immortal kings who flew here were guided by the guide. However, they only knew that the guide was a person who led the way. As for the rest, they had no idea at all. If the celestial venerate hadn't called him primogenitor, they wouldn't have known that this ordinary-looking guide had such a noble identity. Since the guide was called primogenitor by the immortal venerable, it was likely that the senior brother mentioned by the guide was also an extraordinary person. In the next moment, these people focused their gazes, wanting to see what kind of existence the guide called senior brother was. However, after a glance, they were dumbfounded from afar. There was only a figure who was walking quietly in the void. Although he was walking, the appearance of each step condensed the heavens and earth. This was the condensation of the heavens and earth. He did not move 1,000 miles with a single step. Instead, he reduced the distance of 1,000 miles into a single step, allowing him to cross it. This was the embodiment of an unparalleled will. He forcefully commanded the heavens and earth to give way to him. Horrifying, this was truly incomparably horrifying. However, what was truly horrifying wasn't the divine ability that this existence used, but his identity. His invincible identity. Greetings, immortal master, in the void, on the ground, except for the guide and Lu Feng, everyone simultaneously knelt down in the same direction. At the same time, they knelt down in the direction of the paragon immortal master. Looking at the numerous existences, the paragon immortal master gently waved his arm, instantly lifting everyone up. His eyes began to focus on Lu Feng. Indescribable colors flashed in his eyes, causing people to be unable to look straight at him. In the next moment, he looked at the guide. That should be it. Finally, we have waited for so long. It seems like the true end is now. It is now, in this era. The guide nodded his head lightly. The decadence that belonged to an old man had completely disappeared at this moment. In an instant, he seemed to have completed a shocking transformation. Countless battle prowess awakened, causing his soul to constantly change. The entire supreme sacred ground shook even more violently. The aura of countless eras awakened, all of them actually covered the guide's body. Feeling this scene, countless people were dumbfounded. Era. This is the power of Era. He actually succeeded. The guide actually achieved the immortal master level of eternity. Too many things had happened today, causing these people to be unable to accept it. Now, they actually saw the guide breaking through and becoming an existence of the immortal master level. This was truly indescribable. The guide looked at the paragon immortal master, his eyes flashing with vigorous battle intent. This was completely different from the old and haggard look he had before. It was as if he had become a completely different person. In fact, in the hearts of many existences, perhaps this was the true attitude of the guide. Senior brother, the era of today has arrived. It seems like he is the existence mentioned in the primogenitor's teachings. It's just that I really can't imagine what kind of existence he is. He actually surpassed the final king in terms of qualifications. One must know that back then, when the emperor, that forbidden existence came, it didn't cause any changes. His eyes were shining with radiance. At this moment, the guide was also slightly confused. As for that senior brother, he still had a mysterious and calm expression, as if he had no intention of answering him. However, just as the guide was about to open his mouth to ask again, another figure walked over from the void. Looking at this figure, many people's eyes were filled with a strange expression, an incomparably strange expression. Naturally, they knew and understood the existence of this figure. Regarding his legend, countless people grew up listening to it. Although he wasn't at the peak of existence right now, no one dared to look at him. In terms of status, even the immortal masters couldn't compare to him. It's actually the Divine King. The existence that has arrived is actually the Divine King. The Divine King has arrived at such a moment. Chapter 904. The God King actually appeared. He actually appeared in front of everyone just like that. Countless existences were dumbfounded. For these people, the supreme immortal master was a great and supreme terror that dominated their fate. However, the divine king, the ultimate king, was their faith. They needed to treat him with devotion. He was their lifelong faith. The divine king finally stopped in front of everyone. He finally came to the front of the guide. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Looking at the guide, the divine king's voice sounded at this moment. He is the emperor, the emperor. The guide was slightly stunned. Then, he was filled with doubt. Hasn't the emperor already broken through? Then the divine king was still smiling. It was a relaxed smile. He is the emperor. However, he is the Emperor Lu Feng. He is a brand new emperor. He is an even greater emperor. The light that flashed in his eyes was a kind of turbulent radiance. An even greater emperor. Yes, even greater. The existence of the emperor was already an existence that frightened them. He was the ultimate existence among the 5 ultimate kings. However, this Lu Feng was even greater. Then, to what extent was he terrifying? The guide turned around and looked at Lu Feng. He sighed softly. At this moment, the divine king's voice murmured again. After experiencing these decades of transformation, I didn't expect you to have reached such a level. Back then, even the human King Liu Bei wasn't as amazing as you. It's really hard to imagine that you can shock the world to such an extent. However, it seems like your appearance is also the arrangement of their fate. In this final moment, you have finally returned. You are going to rule again. You are going to rule the endless living beings and reach the peak. Emperor Lu Feng, an indescribable radiance flashed in the divine king's eyes. He was different from the immortal kings and demon kings. Not to mention clashing with Lu Feng, he had never even seen him once. Therefore, to him, Emperor Lu Feng was the first time he had seen him in his countless lifetimes. However, although this was the first time they had met, Lu Feng gave him the feeling that this was a fated meeting. It was an arrangement of the fate of this era, a meeting that had been deliberately arranged by time and space. I didn't expect that your first choice would be me. Could it be that my existence is so weak that you think I'm the weakest among the 4? A bitter smile. It was really a bitter smile because he didn't know why Lu Feng would choose him first. But in the next moment, he let out a soft sigh. Forget it. Since you've chosen me, then make your choice. But now was not the time. The few of us have already felt the call of the era, standing at the peak of the era. This time, we won't hold anything back. We'll use everything we've accumulated in this era. We'll use everything we have. In this final era, before the final battle, Emperor Lu Feng, I will clash with you. I will wait for you at the end of the ultimate sky of the 33 levels. The divine king disappeared the moment his voice fell. Below, Lu Feng, who had transformed into a supreme emperor and was resisting the heaven and earth gate, lifted his head abruptly and looked in the direction where the divine king had disappeared. His eyes were filled with a maniacal smile. Battle. This was a different kind of battle. The battlefield of wills had been opened up and all the battles of the era had appeared. Lu Feng was the greatest and most invincible existence in this battlefield of the era. He commanded hundreds of millions. At the beginning, he had been constantly suppressed. Later on, he had been constantly counterattacking. Now that he had become a great emperor phenomenon, he had even begun to suppress the heaven and earth gate. Sensing that he was only a step away from ultimate victory, Lu Feng finally released his most terrifying radiance. Behind him, 5 terrifying phenomenons appeared: Ancient Tree of Life, Canopy of Death, Giant Demon, Apocalyptic Calamity, Great Emperor Incarnation. The appearance of the 5 supreme phenomenons caused many existences to continuously retreat. At this moment, under Lu Feng's power, even immortal kings felt a trace of suppression on their souls. This scene was too shocking. It's actually 5 kinds of origin true essence. But how can these 5 kinds of origin true essence be so powerful to such an extent? This was almost comparable to the power of nearly 8 kinds of origin true essence. Many people were really shocked. However, what shocked them the most about Lu Feng was still to come. It was the last time they saw him. Vaguely, everyone seemed to feel that behind Lu Feng, behind the 5 phenomenons, an illusory existence was born again. That illusory existence seemed to not exist at all, but the power that was transmitted could be easily felt by these people. That kind of power, an immortal king was shocked. His mouth was agape, and he was abnormally horrified. In the next moment, many people answered his question at the same time. That's right, that's the aura of an immortal. That's the aura of the immortal world. That's the phenomenon of the immortal world. What kind of origin true essence is this? It can actually evolve the aura of the immortal world. There had never been a kind of origin true essence that could evolve the aura of the immortal world. This was a theorem and also a truth. But at this moment they actually felt it. The Supreme Immortal Master sighed softly. The shock in his eyes was even more obvious. His voice reverberated throughout the entire area. Emperor, what a powerful emperor, what a terrifying emperor. This kind of power should be the legendary origin true essence, the greatest power. Hearing the Supreme Immortal Master's words, many people were stunned. They frowned slightly and slowly muttered to themselves, the strongest origin true essence? According to the legends, the most powerful true essence of the original I should be immortal energy. It's the 3 legendary immortal forces. The immortal force of creation, the immortal force of law, and the immortal force of destruction. The 3 immortal forces were publicly recognized as the 3 strongest immortal forces. They were the strongest origin true essence. However, although the final evolution of the 3 immortal forces was terrifying, it was definitely not the existence of the immortal world. What exactly is all of this? The 3 immortal forces are indeed the greatest origin true essence. However, they are only a branch of the strongest origin true essence. They are not the whole origin true essence. This time, the Supreme Immortal Venerable seemed to have a special idea. He actually kept explaining to them. Hearing those words, everyone was slightly stunned. An indescribable expression appeared on their faces. They have already heard it, the greatest origin true essence was born in the primitive immortal era, giving birth to the power of the primitive immortal. It is the true primitive immortal force. It's called the primitive immortal force. The great success primitive immortal force is only one kind. It's invincible and unprecedented. In the past, Lu Feng did not have the ability to evolve the phenomenon of the primitive immortal force. However, he could do it now because he has become a peak true immortal. The evolved primitive immortal force had become stronger once again. It was not something that could be compared to the shallow power from before. Although Lu Feng only has 6 types of unparalleled immortal force, his strength is stronger than 10 types of unparalleled immortal force. Light flickered in his eyes. It's turbulent to the extreme. The current him is truly powerful. He's not someone his opponent can compare to. Finally, Lu Feng took a step forward. After resisting for so long, Lu Feng took a step forward for the first time. It's the first time he took a step forward. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk between heaven and earth, something seemed to be collapsing. A loud sound was heard, shaking everyone's heart. But in the next moment, everyone saw a shocking scene. That was the gate of heaven and earth. This great symbol that has existed since the establishment of the 3 great holy lands since ancient times. A crack actually appeared on it. Some people were frightened and wanted to attack. Although Lu Feng's aura was really daunting, his strength was not worth mentioning. Everyone believed that any immortal venerable or even immortal king would be able to easily suppress Lu Feng and save the gate of heaven and earth. However, at this moment no one attacked. because no one dared to. Lu Feng is the emperor, a new and greater emperor. Compared to the ultimate king like the divine king, he's even more terrifying. How could they easily suppress him? Moreover, the two strongest people here did not attack. Then they were even less qualified. After all, one of them is the immortal master of the Holy Land, therefore, they could only speak. Immortal Master, the gate of heaven and earth is connected to the entire Holy Land. If the gate of heaven and earth is damaged, the entire Holy Land will also suffer. And such a loss is definitely not small. This may affect the status of our supreme Holy Lands. The Supreme Immortal Master did not seem to hear. He just looked at Lu Feng quietly. The surrounding immortal kings were all incomparably anxious. They were really anxious because these people had cultivated to their current realm in the Holy Land. They naturally understood that if they lost the Supreme Holy Land, their future cultivation would be greatly restricted. However, before the Supreme Immortal Master spoke, they really could not do anything. Watch quietly. The only thing they could do was to watch quietly. Time seemed to stop at this moment. Countless people could clearly see that on the gate of heaven and earth, the birth of the crack, the spread of the crack, the trembling, the terrifying crack in an instant, the gate of heaven and earth was already filled with countless cracks, as if it would shatter in the next moment. Seeing this scene, countless existences could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. But they really could not do anything. Finally, when the cracks covered the entire gate of heaven and earth, it shattered just as everyone had expected. The gate of heaven and earth cracked. At this moment, the entire immortal island seemed to have undergone some kind of violent destruction. Endless shaking, as if an era had collapsed, it made people's hearts tremble in fear. Many monsters and geniuses on the ground could not stand. They kept swaying and almost fell down. However, this situation did not last for long, because very soon the trembling disappeared. Although the trembling disappeared, many immortal kings showed incomparably ugly expressions. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. As expected, it's like this. As expected, it's like this. When the gate of heaven and earth shattered, they could clearly feel that the immortal spiritual chi on the entire immortal island was rapidly disappearing. In almost an instant, the density of the spiritual chi had dropped to half of its former peak. What did this result mean? Everyone naturally knew that this meant that their cultivation speed would be reduced to half of its former speed. Smiling helplessly, they looked in the direction of Lu Feng. They wanted to see what kind of attitude this powerful emperor would have after destroying the gate of heaven and earth. But when they looked at Lu Feng, they were suddenly dumbfounded, because they saw a scene that made them dumbfounded. Chapter 905. A black hole, a power black hole. What they saw was actually a power black hole formed by the fusion of countless powers. The existence of a black hole was to devour everything, but what this power black hole devoured was an endless amount of power. Could it be, some immortal king seemed to have thought of something, and their faces were filled with shock. Just now, half of the immortal spiritual energy in the entire supreme sacred ground disappeared. Could it be that it was devoured by this power black hole? But what was the reason? Why would a power black hole appear at this moment? Just as everyone was puzzled, the guide who had been silent all this time suddenly laughed. His laughter resounded throughout the entire land. So the legend is true. This gate of heaven and earth really suppressed a power black hole. I just don't know why this power black hole was suppressed in the gate of heaven and earth back then. Those great immortal and demon ancestors, why did they do this? No one could understand the reason behind all this. After all, sealing a power black hole in the gate of heaven and earth and leaving it for future generations was simply incomprehensible. However, when the guide saw what happened next, he vaguely understood what was going on. They gradually understood the ancestral teachings he had seen in the past. This terrifying power black hole that had devoured more than half of the spiritual energy in the entire supreme, sacred ground no longer continued to expand. It actually turned into an indescribable power condensation that floated quietly in the void, incomparably brilliant. The condensation of power, what a tyrannical condensation of power! This kind of condensation of power that was transformed from a power black hole into a power crystal is definitely an incomparably pure existence. Many people's eyes were filled with greed. They understood that once they obtained this power crystal, their cultivation realm and strength would break through once again and enter a whole new realm. However, these people were not idiot. Even if they were greedy, even if they were as strong as immortal kings, when faced with this power crystal, they chose to remain silent. In the end, they restrained all their greed in the depths of their hearts. This power crystal was a good thing, even more precious than a 10th, 11th, or even 12th grade divine item. However, in order to enjoy this good thing, one had to live. After all, there were two immortal masters here. No one could obtain something that did not belong to them under their watchful eyes. Many people guessed that this power crystal would eventually be collected by the two immortal masters and become the inheritance of the supreme sacred ground. After all, this thing was simply too precious. For many people, it was simply more precious than those 11th or 12th grade divine items. However, what happened next left them at a loss. This was because the two immortal masters were completely unmoved in the face of this power crystal that could shock even the immortal masters and make them go crazy for it. All they saw was Lu Feng, and only Lu Feng's existence. Could it be? Many people's expressions changed slightly. They had finally figured it out. However, the possibility that came to their minds left them completely shocked. Could it be that the existence of this power crystal was prepared for the existence that could shatter the heaven and earth gate? Could it be that everything has already been set in stone? Everything has already been arranged. Could it be that Lu Feng is actually the owner of this power crystal? Many people had such guesses, because the following scene was a clear indication of this. Lu Feng looked at the power crystal and actually took a step forward slowly. He was actually moving slowly towards the power crystal. Obviously, no one could accept this. Although Lu Feng's pace was extremely slow, in the eyes of these people, it was still too fast. Although they couldn't possess it themselves, they really didn't want to see someone devour this divine item that had existed since ancient times. Even if they didn't obtain it themselves, they didn't want to see this divine item being obtained by someone else. Unfortunately, these people's thoughts were destined not to be realized, as Lu Feng arrived in front of the power crystal very quickly. Under the gazes of hundreds of millions of people, he gently extended his arm and fused with the power crystal just like that. At this moment, a gloomy vision appeared between heaven and earth, as if the entire era was in a state of depression. The entire power crystal actually entered Lu Feng's body in an instant. In an instant, Lu Feng's body underwent a terrifying change. It was just a normal body, yet it seemed as if countless things had rushed into it and collided with it in an instant, causing it to distort irregularly. As a super-powerful entity, its body structure was extremely sturdy. Even the slightest change couldn't be achieved, let alone distort it. However, at this moment, Lu Feng's body was distorting to such an extent. These people didn't even need to imagine how much pain he was going through. Many people had a slightly pleased expression on their faces. Lu Feng had previously destroyed their cultivation ground. Now, he had even taken the power crystal. Therefore, besides hatred, they also felt a strong sense of jealousy towards Lu Feng. This made them really hope that Lu Feng would fall just like that. Lu Feng's body kept changing. Although they didn't experience this pain personally, everyone could already imagine it. However, when they saw Lu Feng's face, an indescribable expression appeared on their faces. Their expressions were indescribable, but Lu Feng's expression was indifference. Lu Feng was really incomparably indifferent. His indifference made everyone's hearts tremble. It was simply indescribable. This expression didn't seem like the expression of someone who was experiencing an abyss of pain. However, Lu Feng was just like that. He was just like that. Indifference flickered in his eyes. He was incomparably indifferent, as if he didn't care about the pain around him at all. Furthermore, this was the reality of the situation. Lu Feng really didn't care. He didn't care in the slightest. In the past, he had experienced so many things, encountered so many extreme opponents, suffered so many hardships, and suffered so much pain. However, when had he ever sunk into depravity or been defeated? He couldn't do it back then. He couldn't do it in the environment of 9 lifetimes. He couldn't do it in the hundreds of millions of life and death experiences. Now it was even more impossible. It was completely impossible. Therefore, even though he was going through these trials, which were worse than life and death in the eyes of many existences, he was still incomparably indifferent. He even slowly closed his eyes, as if he was enjoying something. Indeed, Lu Feng closed his eyes. He was enjoying it. He was enjoying the thrill of perfection. It had only been a few days since he had broken through and become a peak true immortal. He still needed a lot of time to reach the great obliteration evil body realm. However, what shocked Lu Feng the most was that he had already reached the limit of the great obliteration evil body realm under the impact of countless forces. In fact, he was still breaking through and crazily attacking the existence of the shackles. Lu Feng believed that if he didn't cultivate the great devil true body, then by relying on the countless amounts of energy, he would definitely have broken through and become a truly terrifying existence. He could have broken through to the sky immortal realm or even the golden immortal realm. Unfortunately, everything was a pity. What he practiced was the great devil true body, an incomparably mysterious and peerless cultivation technique. Without enough training, even if he was at the peak of power, he wouldn't be able to break through. Of course, this wasn't without its benefits. The density of this power was too horrifying. It had exceeded the limits of Lu Feng's imagination. Although he was unable to break through it, he could not. Although he couldn't break through, he had already accumulated the great devil true body to the peak of the great apocalyptic evil body. Basically, he only needed to fight a little, without the test of life and death, and he would be able to break through easily. Moreover, the cultivation of the primordial scripture had actually accumulated his comprehension to the peak of this realm. This made him basically an existence that was close to becoming a heavenly master. Countless forces were still pouring in, tormenting Lu Feng. However, Lu Feng was still the same as before. He still didn't tremble at all. Such a scene caused countless existences to fall silent. The ultimate king, is this the ultimate king? It's true. He's worthy of the ultimate name. Lu Feng's current performance had made many people tremble from the bottom of their hearts. They were in awe of him. They were conceited. Even those immortal kings were conceited. Under such circumstances, they couldn't hold on. But what about Lu Feng? His current performance made them feel fear and respect from the depths of their souls. In the sky, the endless dark clouds gradually disappeared. Seeing this scene, many people had strange expressions on their faces. They watched as Lu Feng's body gradually stabilized. In the end, all of them slowly exhaled. These people knew that Lu Feng had finished absorbing. The crystallization of the power that was comparable to any divine object had been completely absorbed by Lu Feng, standing quietly between the heavens and the earth. Lu Feng's eyes were tightly shut. However, there was a turbulent aura around him. Many people's eyes flickered slightly as they said in surprise, "Could it be that he's about to break through?" Lu Feng's performance at this moment really seemed as if he was about to break through. He's become a celestial immortal. Then, how powerful will the power of power be? Countless people were guessing how powerful Lu Feng would be once he broke through. I'm afraid that at that time, young Master Lu will be invincible under the Immortal King realm. Slight size with an indescribable color. Many of the geniuses from the Yellow Spring continent who came here with Lu Feng guessed. They already knew that after becoming a peak gold immortal, once the power of power was activated, Lu Feng's power would be indescribable. His strength had exceeded anyone's imagination. He was only a peak true immortal, but he was definitely comparable to any high-level or even peak golden immortal. Once Lu Feng made another breakthrough, he would naturally be invincible. He would be comparable to any Hunyuan golden immortal. Is this the terror of an emperor? Chapter 906. This was the terror of Emperor Lu Feng. With his own strength, he was able to shake the heavens and earth and even time. Most importantly, he was able to shake the beliefs in everyone's hearts. Standing quietly between the heavens and earth, Lu Feng felt unprecedentedly good at this moment. According to normal calculations, the amount of time he would need to accumulate to reach such a level would definitely be astronomical. After all, the cultivation technique that he cultivated meant that he could improve very quickly or very slowly. However, in terms of accumulation, he was definitely thousands of times better than those demonic geniuses. If it wasn't for such accumulation, he wouldn't have had such a heaven-defying challenge ability. However, what Lu Feng hadn't expected was that his current progress was too obvious. It had only been a little more than 10 years since he had arrived in the second universe, but his progress was really unimaginable. From the demigod realm, he had directly entered the peak true immortal realm. One had to know that he hadn't used any time realm here. All his progress had been completed within 10 years. Moreover, he had gone from the pinnacle of the demigod realm to the pinnacle of the true immortal realm. Compared to entering the pinnacle of the demigod realm without any cultivation base, the amount of time and energy required was far, far greater. After all, one was at the god realm, while the other was at the mortal realm. The gap between them was too big. Floating quietly in the void, Lu Feng sensed his own terrifying strength. His eyes were filled with a turbulent color. At this moment, he felt that he had improved again. Moreover, it was so obvious. It had only been a month since he had broken through, but he had actually entered such a level. This was undoubtedly shocking. However, Lu Feng understood that the power he had accumulated was too strong. If it hadn't been for his special cultivation technique, he would have broken through completely and become a true peak true immortal realm expert. What a pity, what a pity! Although he had obtained such great benefits, Lu Feng still felt that it was a pity in the depths of his heart. However, he was just saying it. In the next moment, two figures walked out of the void. Looking at the two of them and feeling the epical aura from their bodies, Lu Feng sighed softly. I didn't expect that the Supreme Sacred Grounds guides would also be immortal masters. The foundation of the Supreme Sacred Ground is really terrifying, really terrifying. Both guides were epical immortal venerables and immortal masters. This really shocked Lu Feng. However, the most shocking thing was that he saw the Supreme Immortal Master. The Supreme Immortal Master stood there quietly. There wasn't any power emanating from him, as if he was an ordinary existence. However, Lu Feng could really feel that the Supreme Immortal Master's power had reached an unfathomable level. Given Lu Feng's extreme senses, he could clearly feel that this Supreme Immortal Lord's power was truly shocking. He was not any weaker than the Eternal Immortal Lord from the end of ancient times. The Eternal Immortal Master of the ancient era was said to have the fighting strength of the 32nd level of the Ultimate Sky. The fighting strength of the 33rd level of the Ultimate Sky was the strongest existence below the Supreme Ruler. In the history of the primordial Immortal Devil era, Lu Feng had not seen many of them. And to be able to reach limit heaven level 30 in the primordial Immortal Devil era one could definitely be considered as an unparalleled hero. Lu Feng's heart was slowly shaken by the fact that such great existences had been born one after another in the future. A powerful immortal master. He is really an incomparably powerful immortal master. Supreme immortal master, I'm afraid you also want to break through to the ultimate sky realm. Upon hearing Lu Feng's words, the supreme immortal master, who had always been incomparably calm, had a strange glint in his eyes. I do want to, but it's impossible. In this life, if I don't have a great opportunity, my current realm is already my limit. After all, the 33rd level of the ultimate sky realm belongs to those great existences when they break through. Lu Feng nodded lightly. The 5 ultimate kings, their goal had always been to break through to the supreme ruler realm. Unfortunately, after accumulating for countless eras and experiencing countless small reincarnations, they still couldn't break through. Because they knew that their accumulation wasn't enough. It was completely insufficient. Therefore, monstrous existences such as the emperors had all given up on the idea of breaking through directly. Instead, they directly broke through and entered the 33rd level of the ultimate sky realm, waiting for the right time to use the accumulation of eras to break through to the supreme ruler realm. Therefore, the fighting strength of the 33rd level of the ultimate sky realm belonged to the half-step invincible, half-step ruler realm. The supreme immortal master, no matter how heaven-defying he was, ultimately didn't experience the blessing of countless eras. Therefore, he couldn't break through. Without the help of a great opportunity, it was only natural that he couldn't succeed. Lu Feng was silent. The supreme immortal master was also silent. In the end, the two of them looked at each other and sighed softly. Right now, they were almost invincible in their respective realms. Lu Feng belonged to the invincible realm of the monstrous, while the supreme immortal master belonged to the invincible realm of the strong. However, even though they were both in such an invincible state, there were still too many things that they couldn't do. Looking at Lu Feng, the guide at the side finally spoke. Lu Feng, your name is Lu Feng, right? Lu Feng nodded lightly. Lu Feng, where exactly do you belong to? Very direct, without beating around the bush. He directly asked the question in his heart. At this moment, the Supreme Immortal Master was also looking at Lu Feng quietly, waiting for Lu Feng's answer. Lu Feng was silent, looking at the existences around him. At this moment, the two Immortal Masters seemed to have thought of something, and smiled softly. It's my negligence. Some things were destined not to be known by the majority. After all, this was the second universe that was overflowing with strong beings. In the original universe, the Divine King was already an invincible existence, an existence that could know everything. But here, the Divine King was only equivalent to an immortal king, and such an existence couldn't reach the pinnacle. They weren't qualified to know the true secrets. Hence, in the next moment, the Supreme Immortal Master used a heavenly method, instantly changing space, and moved the three of them to an unknown space. There was no longer any existence around, only the three of them were left standing peacefully. Looking at Lu Feng, the Supreme Immortal Master said, "You can speak now." Lu Feng was silent for a moment and finally said, "Actually, the place I came from doesn't belong here. It doesn't belong to this space and time." The guide was slightly stunned, and a slightly confused look appeared in his eyes. However, the Supreme Immortal Master on the other side was still the same as before. He didn't even have the slightest fluctuation. Seeing this scene, the guide also understood. Looking at the Supreme Immortal Master, the guide asked, "Senior brother, you know about it, right?" Hearing the guide's question, the Supreme Immortal Master didn't remain silent, and he only nodded lightly. In the three Holy Lands, there are secret inheritances, and these secrets are only known by the current Immortal Master. Now, seeing Lu Feng's appearance, I also understand that there's no need to hide these secrets anymore. After all, The era foretold in the primordial ancestors' teachings has already arrived. Actually, the space and time we are in isn't the real primordial immortal era. It's just a space and time created by some invincible almighty beings. This is also the final trump card of those invincible beings. The guide was slightly stunned, and he looked at his senior brother, as if he didn't expect there to be so many things here. In our space and time, there are too many secrets, and this is far from what you can imagine. Even I don't know how many secrets there are. As he said this, a trace of helplessness flashed across his eyes. Although he was the supreme immortal master, the supreme immortal master of a holy land, he still knew too little. Looking at his senior brother's expression, the guide knew that he wasn't lying, so all he could do was sigh deeply. Outside of our universe, there are actually other universes, and that universe is the real space left behind by the primordial immortal devil era. Whether it's the size of the land or the number of living beings, compared to our space and time, it's much, much more. However, in the primeval universe, there seems to be a world-shaking disaster every once in a while, causing all life in the primeval universe to be annihilated, making it impossible for the terrifying number of experts and monstrous geniuses to be born there. That world-shaking calamity seems to be a calamity that can annihilate an era. The horror of that calamity is really indescribable. Even an existence as strong as an immortal master can't survive that calamity, and there's no way for them to enter the next era. Only an existence as strong as an unparalleled ruler is qualified to survive a great calamity of a universe. Unfortunately, up until now, in that primordial universe, there might be a few existences whose combat strength is comparable to an unparalleled ruler, but there hasn't been a single living being that has become an unparalleled ruler. Therefore, the calamity at the end of every era is actually the true calamity of the end, a calamity that can annihilate an entire world. Under that calamity, all living beings will be annihilated. Hearing this, the guide's expression changed, turning into an indescribable color. What a terrifying name that could annihilate an entire world. Even an unparalleled immortal master couldn't survive such a calamity. Only a true unparalleled ruler could survive. This was really a calamity that could annihilate an entire world. In the next moment, the guide seemed to have thought of something. His expression changed slightly, and then he looked at the supreme immortal master. Then, in this era, not long ago, the taboo existence, he also came from that primordial universe? Lu Feng knew that the taboo existence they were talking about was his ancestor, human King Liu Bei. Only he had the right to be above the emperor and be called a taboo. Sovereign immortal master was silent, then he nodded lightly. That's right. That monstrous being with the title of human king, a terrifying great being like a taboo, should have come from the primordial universe. Hearing this, the guide nodded lightly. In the next moment, he seemed to have thought of something, and there was a strange look in his eyes as he looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng, what's your relationship with Liu Bei? At this moment, he finally understood and figured out everything. After all, they both had the surname Liu, and they both came from the primordial universe. They were both so heaven-defying, so he couldn't help but make some connections. Lu Feng smiled lightly. Human King Liu Bei, he is the ancestor of my Liu family. And my ancestor, human king, has already made a breakthrough after returning, becoming the first being to break through the 33 levels of taboo heaven since the endless time and space. He has become a supreme ruler like the great primordial immortal master and the holy masters of many holy lands in the primordial immortal devil era. Chapter 907. Shock. They were truly shocked at this moment. Both of them were extremely shocked. That was why Liu Bei was called a taboo existence, because he was simply too heaven-defying. However, they had never expected Liu Bei to be so heaven-defying. He had actually broken through first and completed the shocking feat that the 5 ultimate kings had been unable to accomplish for countless years. Indeed, the primal chaos immortal master had once said that Liu Bei would definitely become an unparalleled existence. He had also concluded that he would be able to break through in this small reincarnation. However, no one had expected him to accomplish it in such a short period of time. Innate talent, unparalleled. After exhaling softly, the two of them fell silent. After a long while, they seemed to have thought of something and looked at Lu Feng. According to the teachings of the primogenitor, a shocking existence would be born in the future era. He would lead countless living beings through the greatest calamity in history and help countless living beings enter a brand new era. Apart from maintaining the balance of time and space, our greatest responsibility is to assist that great being and help him quickly reach the pinnacle so that he can welcome the future calamities. Lu Feng was silent for a moment before he gently nodded his head. Then, is that person you think I am? Lu Feng wasn't being arrogant or conceited. Instead, he understood that his existence was somewhat unimaginable and filled with too many mysteries. Even he himself wasn't clear about it. Therefore, he could only think of himself. The sovereign immortal master nodded gently. Indeed, the gate of heaven and earth isn't used to test one's innate talent. Its existence is the gateway to the 3 Holy Land. Legend has it that there are 3 great black holes sealed within it. They were all left behind by the great existences of the immortal devil era. You have to know that the existence of the black holes is incomparably mysterious. They devour energy. If there isn't enough energy, they will devour everything and evolve into a truly terrifying black hole. However, if there is enough energy, then after devouring enough energy, it will evolve into a crystallization of power. To any existence, this was an absolutely shocking power. However, shattering the gate of heaven and earth and releasing the black hole was not something an ordinary person could do. After all, the gate of heaven and earth is the gateway to the entire Holy Land. Going against it is equivalent to going against the entire Holy Land. If one wanted to fight against the entire sacred land, they would have to be a supreme sovereign. Therefore, generally speaking, no one should be able to break the door. However, there was an exception. That's the person who's chosen. His existence is incomparably great and shocking. He can make everything submit to him. Nothing can compare to him. Other than brute force, he is the only thing that can break the gate of heaven and earth. Back then, the 5 ultimate kings couldn't do it, the monstrous geniuses of the various eras couldn't do it, and your ancestor, human King Liu Bei, couldn't do it either. But you did it. There was no need to say anything else. Lu Feng was silent. After a moment, he finally nodded his head gently. Actually, in this era, there will be a truly shocking change. I vaguely know a little about it. In the original universe, there will be an unprecedented golden age. All sorts of peak monstrous geniuses will emerge one after another. This also proves my previous guess. I don't know when this calamity will happen, but I do know that this calamity will be unprecedentedly terrifying. Moreover, someone once told me that this calamity is directly related to the calamity that ended the primordial immortal devil era. If it fails, then all hope will disappear. From then on, the countless living beings in the universe will cease to exist for all eternity. Lu Feng used the word cease to exist for all eternity. Obviously, these words shocked the 2 immortal masters slightly. The significance of this was simply too great. It made them tremble slightly. Lu Feng looked at them solemnly. What I said is all true, and I am very sure of the truth of this matter. Therefore, I need to increase my strength as quickly as possible. I need to raise my strength to the highest peak as soon as possible. Because, just being a supreme ruler is simply unable to influence the outcome of the battle. Silence. It was really an endless silence. The two immortal masters were somewhat at a loss. Although they were extremely terrifying existences, and like the sovereign immortal master, they had already reached the combat power of the 32nd layer of the ultimate heaven. Such a power was enough to compare with the great and terrifying beings of the primordial immortal devil era. However, there was still an insurmountable gap between them and becoming a supreme ruler. They really could not become such a powerful being. In everyone's hearts, the supreme ruler level was already the pinnacle of existence. However, in this great calamity, this supreme ruler was really nothing. He really could not influence the outcome of the battle. Then, what kind of combat power do you need? The guide asked with difficulty. If even a supreme ruler could not do it, then they really did not know what else could. Lu Feng looked at the two and said with an unusually determined expression, "Yes." Lu Feng stayed in the supreme sacred grounds and cultivated quietly. He did not leave to search for another place, because there was a place in the supreme sacred grounds that Lu Feng had to go to. The Tower of Inheritance, which is the true secret of the three sacred grounds. It is a terrifying training ground that has existed since the establishment of the sacred grounds. Could it be that this Tower of Inheritance was built for me? Lu Feng really had such doubts at this moment, because he had no choice but to have such doubts. The three great towers of inheritance of the three sacred grounds. One is used to temper the physical body, one is used to temper the soul, and the last is used to temper one's will. The existence of these three places is all for tempering the most painful torment. Although other people would also be able to obtain quite a lot of benefits from the Tower of Inheritance, the benefits that they would obtain would be far too lacking compared to mine. What I obtained in the Tower of Inheritance was a breakthrough, the most thorough breakthrough. Could it be that everything is really related? Lu Feng was really puzzled. He always felt that the Tower of Inheritance of the three sacred grounds was inextricably linked to the great devil true body that he cultivated. When he asked the Paragon Immortal Master, the Paragon Immortal Master was also puzzled. He only said that the three pagodas of inheritance had existed since ancient times. Ever since the inheritance of the three sacred grounds was established, they had already existed in this spacetime. Their past immortal masters had also wanted to explore the existence of the Tower of Inheritance, but in the end they were unable to find out the real reason. Although he did not know the reason, Lu Feng did not care about it. As long as it was beneficial to him and could allow him to break through quickly, it was fine, it was enough. Lu Feng did not immediately enter the Tower of Inheritance to accept the challenge, because he still had to tidy up his body. The energy crystals that the black hole had turned into did not completely disappear, nor did they dissipate completely. They were all stored in Lu Feng's body, waiting for the right time to appear and become one of the foundations for Lu Feng's next improvement. In 7 days, Lu Feng was completely immersed in tidying up. During this period of time, the entire Supreme Sacred Grounds was truly shocked. Many people knew the true identity of Lu Feng, and they were incomparably shocked by the arrival of the Ultimate King. After all, as the most monstrous existence, how could these people not know the significance of the Ultimate King? Lu Feng is actually the Ultimate King. No wonder he could be so strong to such an extent, to such an unfathomable extent. His strength is definitely beyond countless. It's no wonder that even the Divine King, the Ultimate King, has appeared. The appearance of the Divine King was not deliberately hidden, and everyone saw it clearly. They were shocked, incomparably shocked in the depths of their hearts. After all, the Ultimate King only existed in their legend. Now, 2 Ultimate Kings had actually appeared at the same time. This was really something that had never happened before. Hearing the Divine King's words, it seems like Lu Feng has come for him. Moreover, according to his words, Lu Feng seems to be a little stronger than them, and he wants to challenge the existence of the 4 Ultimate Kings. This is really incomparably shocking. Many people couldn't help but sigh, and the most sigh was the divine king's last sentence. That sentence, "In your heart, I am actually the weakest." It made many people believe that Lu Feng was the terrifying existence that wanted to challenge all the ultimate kings. Finally, with the appearance of Lu Feng, the shock of the entire supreme sacred grounds had reached its peak, and they had gone completely crazy. Countless people looked at Lu Feng's movements and unconsciously followed him. They all wanted to see what exactly Lu Feng was planning to do. When they saw where Lu Feng had stopped, these people went completely crazy. Lu Feng actually wants to challenge the path of inheritance. He really wants to challenge the path of inheritance. I just don't know how far he can go on the 18 levels of the path of inheritance. The path of inheritance was also known as the path of testing. Basically, every monstrous genius that came here would try to challenge it. Although the path of testing didn't represent anything, it was generally acknowledged that the more paths of inheritance one could pass, the more benefits one would obtain. Furthermore, the more monstrous a genius was, the more paths of inheritance one could pass. Ordinary monstrous geniuses at the peak of the king realm would already be considered very terrifying if they could pass 5 levels of the path of inheritance. Emperor-level geniuses would at most reach the 8th level. Emperor-level geniuses might be able to reach the 11th level, and the most extreme ones might even reach the 13th level. A long time ago, there was such a monstrous genius who had once surpassed the limit of the 13th level. Legend has it that he had almost reached the 14th level at that time. However, no one knows whether this is true or not. However, the most powerful Emperor-level geniuses in history had all reached the 13th level. Legend has it that the ultimate kings had once come here and tried to challenge the Tower of Inheritance. They had all reached the 16th level. And according to the records, the supreme existence of the ultimate king, the strongest emperor, reached the 17th level in the records. This is the history created by the most powerful ultimate king. I wonder how far this Lu Feng will be able to go, and how many levels will he reach. The emperor was known as one of the 5 ultimate kings, the most powerful existence. The fundamental reason was that he had entered the 17th floor of the 3 great inheritance grounds. Although this inheritance tower couldn't show anything, many people still relied on this to judge the strength of the emperor. They believed that he was more powerful than the other 4 ultimate kings. Chapter 908. Many people watched as Lu Fenglai arrived in front of the Tower of Inheritance, and watched as Lu Feng slowly walked in. They started to speculate. Lu Feng is the ultimate king, so he should have reached the 16th floor. After all, the ultimate kings all reached the 16th floor. However, this is not absolute. After all, the ultimate kings who entered the Tower of Inheritance back then had already reached the peak of their era. Moreover, they had all been strengthened by several eras. Their power was terrifying and far from what Lu Feng could compare with. Perhaps this is the gap between them. Therefore, this Lu Feng might have stopped at the 15th floor. This was the conjecture of many people. However, Lin Yu and the others sneered at this conjecture. They had really witnessed Lu Feng's shocking transformation and witnessed Lu Feng's shocking strength. They also knew that Lu Feng had shockingly condensed the world into his body. Such a magnificent feat had never been accomplished before. The Demon King had done this before, but unfortunately, he failed. He failed completely. Lu Feng succeeded. This means that Lu Feng is even more monstrous than the Demon King. Therefore, how can he lose to those people? It is absolutely impossible for Lu Feng to fail. The group of 19 people had absolute confidence in Lu Feng. Therefore, they were waiting, watching, and looking forward to the final result. Looking at the towering Tower of Inheritance in front of him, Lu Feng's eyes were filled with complex emotions. His emotions were really complicated. This was a kind of spiritual complexity, a kind of shock from the depths of his heart. I didn't expect to see you here, it's you, the familiar you. This tower of inheritance and ultimate Futu were so similar. Although there were many differences, Lu Feng could see it clearly. This tower of inheritance and ultimate Futu were shockingly similar. The appearance of the Babel Stupa was not something that could be compared to. It was completely different from anything he knew. Lu Feng had experimented later on and found that no matter what method he used, he could not depict ultimate Futu's existence. It was for this reason that Lu Feng believed the eternal immortal Lord's evaluation of ultimate Futu. Ultimate Futu is not something that history has the right to engrave or remember. This is ultimate Futu. This is the greatness of ultimate Futu. It is the greatest artifact of all. It is a 14th grade artifact. No other artifact can compare to it. It is an artifact's existence. As expected, its existence has a lot to do with the primordial immortal demon era. Looking at this tower of inheritance, Lu Feng was sure that the person who had built this tower of inheritance must have truly seen ultimate Futu. Moreover, he could have used a huge amount of power to build it. Lu Feng chuckled under the gazes of countless monsters and experts. Then, he finally took the first step into the Tower of Inheritance. It's lit up. The first level is lit up. The torture on this level is really painful. It's no less painful than being severely injured. An ordinary existence with a weak will would have fainted by now. The people here had all entered it before, so they naturally knew how painful it was on the first level. How long do you think Lu Feng will take to pass the first level? Everyone took a different amount of time to pass the first level, so they were all guessing. Back then, it took me a day to get used to the environment and enter the second level. As for those monsters, they only took half a day to pass. Since Lu Feng is the ultimate king, I think he'll be much faster. I reckon that he'll only have a quarter of an hour at most. However, perhaps I've overestimated him. After all, he's only a peak true immortal. I think many people began to guess. They had been cultivating here for far too long and had lived a dull life for countless years. Therefore, when they saw such an interesting place, they really couldn't help but discuss it. However, just as these people were discussing heatedly, a voice suddenly rang out. You guys don't think anymore. Lu Feng will break through all limit. He only needs an instant. Hearing this, many people wanted to laugh. However, when they looked at the Tower of Inheritance, they were stunned. They were completely stunned. The reason for that was because they had seen a horrifying scene. Unknowingly, the third level of the Tower of Inheritance had lit up. He actually entered the third level while we were talking? He actually really entered the third level? Just as they were discussing, just as they were talking, Lu Feng actually entered the third level. This was impossible. It was truly impossible. It was completely impossible. They were truly unable to believe it. They couldn't believe it. However, everything before their eyes happened just like that. Even if they were unwilling to believe it, it was impossible. Because this was reality, this Lu Feng, really, he's worthy of the title of Overlord. He's worthy of being the ultimate king. Many people understood how terrifying the second and third levels were. Even monstrous emperor-level geniuses would need an endless amount of time to enter the third level. They, at the very least, needed a day to do it. But what about Lu Feng? He completed it in a very short period of time. He did it. In such a short period of time, while they were talking, he actually entered the third level. This was truly too terrifying. They couldn't believe it. It was truly too extreme. Everyone was really speechless. Their expressions changed. They really couldn't believe it. However, this was far from the end of their shock. Lu Feng's purpose in exploring the path of inheritance this time was to shock everyone and become an eternal legend. In the next moment, in an extremely short period of time, he actually entered the fourth level. No, not the fourth level. It's the fifth level. In the blink of an eye, the 5th level of the Tower of Inheritance was already very eye-catching. Many people looked at each other. In the end, they didn't say anything. They just looked on indifferently. The 6th level was instantly passed without any obstruction. The 7th level was the same. Lu Feng actually entered the 15th level in less than half a day's time. Such a scene had already rendered everyone speechless. After a long time, someone finally murmured, "I remember that the fastest record was once Overlord. He entered the 12th level in just one day. And this is already an unbeatable record." However, this Lu Feng, entering the 15th level in less than half a day's time, was simply not a record. This was a miracle, a sacred miracle. An eternal legend standing on the 15th level of the Tower of Inheritance. Lu Feng exhaled gently. There was an indescribable glow in his eyes. Lu Feng smiled faintly when he sensed the slight increase in power in his body. This calamity was really useful. In the previous few levels, he could be considered to have experienced countless calamities. These were really painful. However, for Lu Feng, who had experienced countless life and death situations, this was really nothing. Compared to the billions of life and death situations he had experienced in the last 2 paths in the Massacre Abyss, this was nothing. Furthermore, Lu Feng cultivated the great demon true body. It focused on integrating billions of calamities into one's body, forging one's invincible realm, and giving one an unrivaled attitude and aptitude. Therefore, it was easier for him to pass through those calamities. Very quickly, Lu Feng reached the 15th level. The 15th level was already a place that no monstrous monarch could enter. This was a forbidden area that belonged to the ultimate kings, the taboo kings. Being able to enter the 15th level means that one must be the ultimate king. However, this is still not enough. It is far from enough. This kind of pain and suffering was enough to make anyone break down. However, for Lu Feng this was really nothing. Because he wanted to enter the next level, this level was still not enough. However, this time, Lu Feng did not enter the next level directly. This was because the 15th level was different from the previous levels. This place was really vast. It could even be said to be infinitely vast. The entrance to the next level was in a very distant place. What he had to do was endure countless calamities and head to the deepest part of this place. Then, he would enter the 16th level through the exit. The 15th level was a world of flames. However, these flames were not ordinary flames. They were a kind of extremely intense physical flame. The flames that are the true limit of the universe are terrifying flames that can burn souls and even destroy nomological laws and power. These flames should be the true limit of flames. All of them are invisible flames. However, the flames here clearly have a form. Why do they give me such an extreme feeling? Unknowingly, Lu Feng had already unleashed his own world battle constitution. He had already amplified his physical body tenfold. He had already unleashed the embryonic form of the invincible battle constitution and integrated the great demon true body into it. Now, his physical body was really invincible. It could be said that, except for the true 11th grade monarch path mythological taboo area, he was already at the absolute peak of invincibility. However, even with such a physical body, Lu Feng still felt an excruciating pain as he was engulfed in flames. Although this feeling couldn't make him change his mind, this pain still existed. It was burning him constantly. After a long time, Lu Feng exhaled deeply. There was an indescribable excitement in his eyes. Could it be that this is actually the case? This Tower of Inheritance is used to test the physical body. This place allows the physical body to enter continuously. This should be the benefit of this place. As for me, can I use this place to shatter it? Chapter 909. Lu Feng thought of a possibility that really existed. This possibility made Lu Feng's heart tremble. If that's really the case, then, thinking of this possibility, he kept gasping for breath. The endless flames around him were burning his body, making him unable to feel the unusual pain. Because if such a possibility really existed, then he would become an extremely special existence, an existence that surpassed anyone's imagination. This is a test of the physical body. Now that I have almost reached the peak of the physical body realm, if I can further temper myself, then my physical body will achieve the eternal monarch body. Once he achieved the eternal monarch body, not to mention the strength of his power, just the extent of his existence would be extraordinary and unbelievable. After achieving the eternal monarch body, then the enhancement of my physical body will enter the real 11x. In other words, at that time, I will enter the forbidden mythological domain of the physical body. In addition to the forbidden mythological domain of my combat power. At that time, I will be equivalent to a real-time overlord. This is really too hard to imagine. Now, Lu Feng was only a peak true immortal, but once he broke those forbidden mythological domains, then he would enter a realm that ordinary people could not imagine. His strength would definitely be more powerful than ordinary time overlords. Although I may not be comparable to time overlords in the complete realm, I will definitely surpass those time overlords in the master realm and even be comparable to time overlords in the invincible realm. If I use 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals, this is the ultimate immortal technique, then perhaps I can challenge those who have just stepped into the epic overlord realm. In the first divine king realm, which was the universe supreme realm, he could use 1 million mortal worlds, 1 million immortals. Once he reached the time overlord realm, Lu Feng's 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals would be strengthened again. It was even possible to use 1 billion mortal worlds, 1 billion immortals. Once he released 100 million mortal worlds and 100 million immortals, then he was confident that he could challenge the epic overlord realm. Thinking of this possibility, Lu Feng was extremely excited. At the next moment, his eyes were filled with determination. Lu Feng smiled as he looked into the distance. It was a smile filled with excitement. Finally, he took a step forward. He took a step forward. He took a step into the distance. Countless flames burned every inch of his body. Lu Feng's physical body was a combination of the great star devil body of the great devil true body, as well as the power of destruction and the power of the world. All powers were extreme powers. There shouldn't be any impurities in these powers. However, Lu Feng felt that under the burning of these flames, he was still constantly being consumed. It seemed like something in his body was being burned and was disappearing. Soon, Lu Feng understood that these were not impurities, but a kind of purification, an even more terrifying smelting. This was to eliminate all the unsuitable substances in his body, all the power that was not strong enough, and all the power that was not strong enough. This kind of feeling was undoubtedly painful, and it was driving him crazy. However, Lu Feng was still persevering. Besides condensing the eternal monarch body, his greatest hope was to break through. The existence of this tribulation made Lu Feng vaguely feel the traces of his own breakthrough. He knew that if he could really complete all 18 levels of the Trial Pagoda, then he could really break through and become a celestial immortal. He would be at the peak of the celestial immortal realm. After the celestial immortal realm is the true monarch realm. I'm actually not far from the true peak. I'm really not far away. As long as he could become the peak of the celestial immortal realm and become a golden immortal, then Lu Feng believed that he would almost reach the great accomplishment realm. The moment I become a divine king, I'll surpass my ancestor, the human king, and become the first and only existence in the endless time and space to directly shatter 3 levels of the divine king mythological forbidden domains. At that time, I'll have the combat power of the forbidden mythological domain. When all 4 mythological domains are activated, I'll have the true combat power of the 33 levels of the ultimate sky. If I add my invincible physical body, the great vision of the omnipotent Futu, and unleash the 1 billion mortal dusts and 1 billion immortals. Lu Feng firmly believed that at that time, he would truly possess the greatest power. He would be able to defeat any supreme ruler. This was Lu Feng, the Emperor Lu Feng. Lu Feng smiled, a faint smile, as he sensed the terrifying restrictions around him, the burning of the flames, and the devastation of the extreme Tao. Every time he smiled, it would tug at his body, causing the pain to continue and making his soul tremble. However, in the face of this, Lu Feng didn't care at all. He chose to ignore it. As he kept moving, Lu Feng didn't choose the fastest way to pass through. This was because he could feel that, although this environment was painful, it had unimaginable benefits for his body and power. Therefore, he kept persevering until he felt that he couldn't advance any further. Only then would he give up. Countless existences looked at the bright 15-story tower in the void with a puzzled look on their faces. Previously, Lu Feng had only used less than half a day to pass through the first 15 levels. However, he had spent a total of 3 days on the 15th floor. After 3 whole days, Lu Feng still hadn't passed through. This made many existences feel puzzled. Previously, according to the legends, the powerful ultimate kings didn't even stay on the 15th floor for more than a day. However, Lu Feng has spent more than 3 days. Could it be that this is his limit? Many people were puzzled, filled with a perplexed expression. Previously, according to Lu Feng's crazy progress, they had imagined that Lu Feng would very likely surpass the Emperor realm and become the first existence to reach the peak of the 18 treasure pagodas. However, the result now confused them. Of course, it was only the monstrous geniuses who were confused. The invincible powerhouses hidden in the void, the terrifying existences above the immortal king realm, all revealed solemn expressions. This Lu Feng is really terrifying. At this moment, all the powerhouses above the immortal king realm shared the same thought. They were all extremely solemn and filled with an indescribable feeling. Those monstrous geniuses didn't understand, but how could these immortal kings not understand? They truly understood and understood everything. In the 18 treasure pagodas, one has to endure endless tribulations. Even the ordeal on the 11th or 12th floor is indescribably painful. As for the 15th floor, I'm afraid it has reached an extreme level that is indescribable. Many immortal kings had the same thought. All of them had attempted the 18 treasure pagodas before, but basically all of them had stopped at the 11th or 12th floor. However, the tribulations on the 11th or 12th floor were already enough to make their souls tremble when they thought about it. Being able to stay on the 15th floor for 3 days doesn't mean that Lu Feng isn't capable. It just means that he is terrifyingly powerful. He actually managed to last for 3 days in such an environment. This is really inconceivable. Many people were incomparably impressed by Lu Feng. However, they were also a little puzzled. If Lu Feng could stay on the 15th floor for such a long time, how could he not pass it? Given Lu Feng's power, he should be able to find the right path in 3 days. Everyone was puzzled and couldn't understand. More than 3 days passed in this manner. When Lu Feng had been in the treasure pagodas for 7 days, the 16th floor finally lit up in the void. At this moment, many people heaved a long sigh of relief. Their expressions were slightly strange. As expected, Emperor Lu Feng is indeed a monstrous genius of this era. He still managed to enter the 16th floor. However, I don't know if he will be able to create history and become an invincible existence like the Emperor of the past. He will become a true existence on the 17th floor. This was the common thought of all the monstrous geniuses and experts. As for the experts above the immortal king realm, they were the same. They were also quietly watching in the endless void, The two immortal masters looked at the mysterious training pagoda with strange looks on their faces. Senior brother, do you think Lu Feng is really the one who has been chosen? Hearing the guide's words, the sovereign immortal master fell silent for a moment. After a while, he shook his head slightly. Actually, the so-called chosen one isn't the one our primogenitor has chosen. The real chosen one can be anyone. The guide was slightly taken aback and frowned slightly. In the next moment, he seemed to have thought of something and smiled gently, nodding his head. Yes, that's how it is. In fact, there is no such thing as a chosen one. Anyone who can defy the heavens is the real chosen one. The sovereign immortal master nodded his head gently. The legend of the calamity is true. Moreover, you and I have already felt it. In this era, there are too many differences and too many shocks. Therefore, there will be a world-shaking change in this era. I firmly believe. At this moment Lu Feng appeared. Although his strength isn't enough, what he has is something none of us can compare to. Our future has already been decided. Our future has already been limited. In the end, we will just be like this. Previously, Lu Feng had already said that in the future calamity, even someone as strong as the supreme ruler couldn't decide anything. He might even be abandoned. Therefore, what we need is the strongest existence. A truly invincible existence. To achieve this, only Lu Feng can do it. It's not that we chose him. It's that only he can do it. The four ultimate kings couldn't, they really couldn't. They had already been limited. At most, they could only become the supreme ruler in the future. In the future, this wouldn't be of much use. It was the same for the emperor. Perhaps he was really strong, but there was a limit to his strength. He couldn't become the savior of the world. Actually, Lu Feng's primogenitor, that human king Liu Bei, can also do it. Hearing the guide mention Liu Bei's name, the sovereign immortal master fell silent for a moment. After a while, he shook his head gently. Liu Bei is powerful and terrifying. He's a heaven-defying monster. I once thought that the chosen one was him. Unfortunately, in the end, I denied it because I know that he isn't. In Liu Bei's heart, he doesn't have that kind of big heart. He only wants her. Chapter 9-10. On the 16th floor, Lu Feng felt an icy cold that froze his entire body. This made his movements stiff, making it difficult for him to move. Lu Feng took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the pain in his eyes. He was really trembling. This freezing is actually only aimed at the physical body. How can this cold be so painful? At this moment, Lu Feng really had the urge to give up. After all, this kind of pain was really indescribable. But in the next moment this thought disappeared. Because he, Lu Feng, was a person who would walk to the end of everything. He would never admit defeat. He would never fail. If he failed, then he wouldn't be Emperor Lu Feng. Furthermore, Lu Feng also felt it. He could clearly feel the incomparably eye-catching metamorphosis within his body. This feeling made him really excited. Soon, it's really soon. It was really soon. Regardless of whether it was his physical body or his own cultivation base, it was really fast. He was about to succeed. This was undoubtedly incredible. It made his heart tremble. Lu Feng had never imagined that he would actually break through so quickly after the last breakthrough. Therefore, he persevered. Even though the pain was indescribable, he still wouldn't give up. He chose to persevere. Step by step, Lu Feng continued walking. His body was trembling, and his soul was trembling. This sort of coldness was way too painful, causing his movements to be greatly restricted. However, Lu Feng no longer cared about that. Lu Feng persisted in walking. There was only determination in his eyes. Incomparable determination. Time passed slowly. This time, 12 days had passed. 12 whole days. Lu Feng had stayed on the 16th floor for 12 whole days. Evidently, this time, even the ordinary monstrous geniuses had seen it and understood. They had already thought about how terrifying Lu Feng was. How powerful. The 4 ultimate monarchs who withdrew from the 16th floor didn't even stay on this floor for 3 days. In the end, they couldn't bear it and withdrew completely. Back then, the emperor only stayed for 5 days. But this Lu Feng had already been gone for 12 days. What kind of existence is he to be able to stay in such an environment for 12 days? Does he not know what pain is? He really didn't know what pain was. They didn't understand how Lu Feng had managed to hold on for so long, just as they didn't know Lu Feng's current state. Could it be that he still hasn't found the exit? That shouldn't be possible. According to what the final king said, the exit wasn't that hard to find. It's just that the distance is too far for them to reach it. But Lu Feng, he still hasn't reached the 17th floor. He still hasn't reached the 17th floor. Lu Feng, did you really not find him? But right now, the exit was right next to him. However, at this moment, Lu Feng was still standing in the same spot, and had yet to enter the exit. From the beginning to the end, he was still in this world of endless ice, enduring this endless torment, this excruciating torture. Finally, when the 15th day arrived, Lu Feng's eyes lit up. His eyes, which had been closed for a long time, opened completely. Yes, it's time, it's time. Lu Feng already felt that he had entered the most perfect state. Now, these torments couldn't help him improve at all. Therefore, he had to enter the next floor. Looking at the hazy light circle in front of him, Lu Feng smiled gently and walked into it. What exactly is this? It was difficult to curve the corners of his mouth. Because this time, the pain came so suddenly and so intensely. This feeling wasn't any worse than the torment he had experienced in the massacre abyss. The endless pain of dying millions of times was actually no worse. Lu Feng knew that back then, it had been so painful because of the continuous life and death experiences. However, this time, it had actually reached such an extreme degree. Lu Feng really couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. However, everything was really born like this. The 17th floor wasn't very big. It was only a small area. Lu Feng could already see the exit in front of him. However, this intense pain made him unable to move at all. His voice was no longer coherent. No sweat flowed out. However, this kind of pain really seeped into his bones and soul, making his movements incoherent. Lu Feng could feel that his soul seemed to be unable to control his body. It was the same for his own willpower. The only thing his willpower could do was not to get lost in this kind of pain. He didn't want to sink into this endless pain. This was his limit. There was no attribute world on the 17th floor. The existence of this place was a kind of invisible and terrifying torture. It was a kind of torture of the essence of one's power. The strength of his body was increasing rapidly. As for his cultivation level, it was continuously breaking through the final shackles. In fact, Lu Feng could even feel the faint shackles in the depths of his cultivation level slowly shattering. However, he really wanted to give up now. This kind of pain was completely indescribable. However, every time Lu Feng wanted to give up, a figure would appear in his mind. Sometimes it was his parents. Sometimes it was his brothers. Sometimes it was his lover. It was Yuyo Qingran. It was Mu Xueyan. It was their existence that made Lu Feng persevere. He still didn't choose to give up. I want to become stronger quickly. I want to become stronger. I want to become stronger continuously. Only by becoming stronger can I ensure the safety of the people around me. Only then can I ensure that they can truly live. In the primal universe, there were terrifying existences and overlords of God Slayer. Their strength was indescribable. Even if those pinnacle overlord races joined forces, they still wouldn't be able to contend against them. Although the human race had human king palace, this couldn't be guaranteed forever. It could make martial arts avatars betray their masters, fill them with spiritual intelligence, and eventually turn them into independent individuals. What other powerful trump cards did God Slayer have? No one knew. No one could imagine. Lu Feng didn't even know if they had the means to break through the human king palace. Moreover, he was an emperor. He regarded billions of living beings as his own people. He had promised many people that he, Lu Feng, would protect the entire human race and all living beings. Therefore, he couldn't bear to see these people suffer such a disaster. In the end, they all died and disappeared. Back then, didn't the sovereign personage also disappear without a trace? All of this must have something to do with God Slayer. It must have something to do with it. I can't bear to see my family, friends, lovers, and clansmen drowning in the abyss of suffering and experiencing the pain of death. I can't. I definitely can't. Therefore, I have to return. I have to return as soon as possible. I have to be strong enough to protect them. I, Lu Feng, can't admit defeat. I definitely can't admit defeat. After an earth-shattering roar, Lu Feng slowly took a step forward. He had finally taken his first step in this place. At this moment, a shattering sound was heard. An unprecedented feeling came over Lu Feng. He felt as though he had made a breakthrough and ascended to a higher level. An endless aura of destruction came over. Nothing could stop it. It was actually born in this torturous environment. What is that? Countless existences looked up at the void, all of them in a daze. They looked at the frightening vision in the void and couldn't believe what was happening. It was the same for those immortal king experts. The two immortal masters felt the aura of destruction in the void and sucked in a deep breath. This aura of destruction is really too unbelievable. Could it be that the legend is true? Could it be that the disaster that Lu Feng spoke of has arrived now? This kind of aura of destruction completely enveloped everything. Any words were useless and any resistance was powerless. Even the two great immortal masters could feel an aura of imminent destruction at this moment. But in the next moment, the Paragon Immortal Master finally calmed down. He looked at the surroundings of the Inheritance Tower, at the densest apocalyptic aura. He took a deep breath and his expression changed. He was completely shaken. No, it's not. Everything isn't like this. This aura of destruction isn't the real destruction of the world. The disaster that Lu Feng spoke of hasn't arrived yet. It hasn't appeared yet. The aura of destruction here is man-made. The source of all of this is Lu Feng. Emperor Lu Feng, it's Emperor Lu Feng. He seems to have broken through again and entered a new realm of unimaginable, becoming an existence at the pinnacle. And this aura is the aura that he brought with him when he broke through. The guide was in a daze. He looked at his senior brother beside him, unable to believe the truth of the matter. But, is this possible? Lu Feng, he's just a demon, he's just a peak true immortal. If he wants to trigger this kind of aura of destruction and let us feel this kind of destruction, then to what extent has he entered? Could it be that he has become the great overlord of the 33 layers of ultimate heaven, or even the supreme ruler of the world? This shouldn't be, this is absolutely impossible. The guide couldn't believe it. Upon hearing his words, the sovereign immortal master shook his head gently. He didn't break through. If he really broke through, then it wouldn't be just this kind of vision. Could it be that you've forgotten the Emperor, that heaven-defying demon who broke through? When the Emperor broke through, the era trembled. The entire second universe was completely silent in that kind of terrifying aura. But now there was no such feeling. This proved that Lu Feng hadn't reached that stage. I think that the Emperor has cultivated an invincible cultivation method, one that is even more terrifying than the cultivation method that the Emperor had cultivated in the past. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reached such a level. Invincible aptitude, monstrous talent, unparalleled opportunities, and immortal willpower. And now, coupled with this indescribable invincible cultivation technique, this Lu Feng, No wonder he was chosen. Indeed, if he isn't the chosen one, then who else is qualified? Who has the qualifications to do so? At this moment, even the Supreme Immortal Master, who had always been an incomparably dignified existence, was completely boiling and crazy. He finally understood what it meant to be a chosen, what it meant to be a heaven-defying demon, what it meant to be invincible and terrifying. Chapter 9:11. In their eyes, the apocalyptic energy surrounding the Tower of Inheritance had completely descended. Everyone could vaguely see an indescribable image condensing. The condensation of this image was very hazy. However, no one was anxious. They were just trembling uneasily as they watched in bewilderment. This was because they knew that this supreme aura was definitely not as simple as it seemed. From the looks of it, this illusory image was also slowly taking shape. There would eventually come a time when it would completely materialize. Furthermore, it wouldn't take too long. It wouldn't take too long in the void. Countless apocalyptic auras were condensing. As the apocalyptic aura continued to appear, the speed at which it was condensing also became faster and faster. At the final moment, it had already taken shape. That's a figure. That's a figure. What kind of figure is that? What kind of terrifying and mighty figure is that? That vaguely seems to be demon. Demon. It was a demon. This was a true demon. This was a true eternal demon. Compared to this entity that had completely taken shape and roared in the void, the demonic creatures of the underground abyss and the unparalleled demon were all jokes. They were all complete jokes. This was a true demon. A true unparalleled demon. This was a demon. This was a great apocalyptic demon. Lu Feng had finally broken through completely. Amidst this indescribable torture, he had finally broken through completely and entered the 5th level of the Great Demon True Body, the great completion stage of the Great Demon Destroyer stage. This meant that Lu Feng's monstrous talent had broken through once again. Once again, he had improved. Once again, he was unfathomable. I wonder what the secret of the final level is. What kind of secret is hidden in the 18th level of the trial ground? There was a secret hidden in the final trial ground. This was something that all the immortal lords of the past knew about. However, they only knew that there was a secret here. They didn't know what the secret was. This was because they simply couldn't enter the final level. Once upon a time, there were only 2 people who had the greatest hope of entering the final level. The first person was the Emperor. He had once entered the 17th level during the primitive era. However, in the end, he hadn't persevered. The torment on the 17th level had been so painful that he had almost collapsed. Would he fail, or would he be stopped at the very end? Would he be able to leave this place completely, unable to find out the final secret? As for the second one, it was the former sovereign personage. That was a taboo existence. Back then, Liu Bei had also entered the pinnacle level. He had also entered the 17th level. But in the end, he gave up. For some reason, he gave up. Originally, he was going to be the first to enter the 18th floor and learn all the secrets, but he gave up. Vaguely, they could still remember clearly the words that the human king had said when he left the 17th floor. This place is not the place I am looking for. There is no trace of her returning here. At that moment, the human king was truly desolate. It made one's heart ache. He, Liu Bei, was really the person who was the closest to him. He was also the most qualified person. What a pity, what a pity, what a pity. In the end, the human kings did not enter finally. It was Lu Feng's turn. It was the turn of this even more terrifying monster. Previously, he already had the strength to reach the final stage. Now that he has broken through, it will be even easier for him. Easier? At this moment, Lu Feng was already a lot more relaxed. At this moment, he was slowly moving his feet. Although it was still so difficult, after breaking through and going through the baptism of world destruction, he had become a lot stronger. He was finally able to face it head-on and not have any thoughts of running away. Of course, what shocked Lu Feng the most was that he could feel the crazy condensing of his physical body. That terrifying improvement! After entering the great success stage of the Great Devil True Body, Lu Feng had already transformed. He had become completely crazy. His strength was really indescribable. Every step he took was a crazy turbulence. It was a kind of strong advance. No matter what he faced, he did not have any hesitation. He was absolutely persistent. Moreover, Lu Feng's realm had already stabilized. He knew that he had broken through. He had already entered the heavenly immortal realm. Any power of laws was already under the control of his soul. The Primordial Sutra had also made an incredible breakthrough at the same time, allowing him to enter the great success stage. Lu Feng knew that as long as he left this place and absorbed enough power through the king's prayer, he would be able to quickly enter the peak of the heavenly immortal realm. At that time, relying on the power of the power crystals that he had absorbed, he would be able to quickly raise his strength to the limit and enter the great perfection realm. Break through to the great perfection realm. Break through to the great perfection realm. At that time, Lu Feng would be able to break through to the great perfection realm. That was the Great Devil True Body and the Primordial Sutra's final great perfection realm. Of course, right now, Lu Feng was most excited because he could feel the power in his body boiling. That was the peak of improvement. He had originally thought that his physical body was already 11 times stronger than the Divine King's forbidden mythological domain, the strongest physical body he had ever had. However, at this moment Lu Feng understood that he was still very far away from the so-called peak. At the very least, the rapid improvement of his physical body proved everything. Soon, it's really soon. Really, he was already very close. He was already very close. Lu Feng felt as if he was approaching a limit. It was a legendary realm that countless living beings had to look up to. He knew that once he broke through that realm, Lu Feng would be the first heavenly immortal to break through 2 of the Divine King's forbidden mythological domains and enter the flowing time immortal supremacy, which meant that he would be the flowing time overlord. With such a firm belief in his heart, Lu Feng's footsteps became even more resolute. Eventually, without realizing it, he had traveled a very long distance. As he looked at the faintly discernible passage ahead, Lu Feng's heart rose completely. The 18 levels of the Trial Pagoda were 18 different levels of pain and torment. What Lu Feng had to face was this pain and torment. Just the 17th level had already made him feel this way. Lu Feng really didn't know what kind of horror he would face on the 18th level. In the 18th floor, there's only a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. However, I really don't want to give up. I really can't give up. I really can't give up. Therefore, I won't hesitate. Finally, after 3 whole days of torture, Lu Feng arrived at the exit. This was the exit, but it was also a place of danger. He would enter an even more dangerous world. Perhaps in the next moment, when he took a step forward and entered the 18th level of the tower, which no one had ever entered since the 18th level of the tower appeared, a calamity of instant annihilation would occur. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to give up. He would die completely. But could he give up? He couldn't. Regardless of his identity or everything else, he couldn't give up. He had to face it. He had to walk through it bravely. He was Lu Feng. He was Emperor Lu Feng. He had to protect everything. Therefore, he had no reason to give up. I don't dare. The result is like this. I have to take this step eventually. I have to take this step. He did it. He really did it. Lu Feng, he really did it. When the entire world saw the light on the top level, everyone was silent and stunned. Then they went crazy. There was an endless frenzy of worship and worship. There was a frenzied surge. Everyone was in an uproar. They really couldn't describe it. This is a miracle. This is a miracle. Since ancient times, no one has ever succeeded. No one has ever been able to reach this level and enter the final 18th floor. The Divine King couldn't do it. The Demon King couldn't do it. The Immortal King couldn't do it. The Sage King couldn't do it. Even the strongest Emperor couldn't do it. They had experienced countless eras and traveled through time and space. No one could compare to their strength. But they still couldn't. But now someone has succeeded. Someone has done it. It's Lu Feng. It's the brand new Lu Feng. It's the brand new Emperor Lu Feng. He rose in this era without the blessing of any era. But he succeeded. He did something that no one else could do. Lu Feng is worthy of being peerless. He's worthy of being the heaven's pride of this era. Compared to the 5 ultimate kings, these people, these monstrous geniuses, even these immortal king-level existences, all liked Lu Feng a little more. Because in their eyes, Lu Feng represented someone who rose up from the ordinary. This was completely different from those ultimate kings who had the aura of destiny. When Lu Feng broke through and was able to suppress the ultimate kings, everyone felt a kind of excitement. Because this meant that they weren't bad. They weren't inferior to those ultimate existences. As long as they worked hard, then they could also become the same existences. In essence, they were all the same. The ultimate secret of the 18th level of the trial ground is finally about to appear. It's just that I don't know what the ultimate secret is. Is it the legendary earth-shattering cultivation technique that can allow one to ascend to the 9 heavens? Or is it a great gift? Or perhaps it's a kind of unparalleled divine ability? Countless people were guessing. Even the 2 immortal master-level existences were the same. However, their excitement wasn't the same as these people. Because they thought of a legend, a distant legend, a legend that belonged to the most primitive era. Unlocking the ultimate secret is the opening of the final era. Only the existence who obtains the ultimate secret can achieve true eternity. Only then can they achieve true invincibility. If it wasn't for the existence of this ancient legend, then why would the 5 ultimate kings enter this place and challenge it? But it seems like the 5 ultimate kings have no chance of becoming invincible. They are destined to be unable to come into contact with the ultimate existence. Only this person who has chosen can do it. The 18th level was opened. Chapter 9:12. The 18th floor was finally opened, and Lu Feng finally entered it. The 18th floor was the end of the trial pagoda. It was a legendary place that no one had ever entered before. The existence of this place was really mysterious. It made all living beings daydream endlessly. Legend had it that besides the great supreme ruler of the primordial immortal devil era, who had created the 3 great holy lands, no other living being had ever entered this place. It could be said that this was the greatest secret of all time and space. Now, Lu Feng had finally arrived, mentally prepared. Lu Feng had already understood before he took that final step. What existed here was an indescribable disaster that could obliterate his physical body in an instant. However, for the sake of what he wanted to protect, he still walked in without hesitation. When he finally came in, Lu Feng was dumbfounded. He was stunned for a moment. He was really at a loss. It wasn't that the disaster here was so terrifying that he couldn't even move. It wasn't that the disaster here had completely obliterated him. Everything was the exact opposite. It was the complete opposite. There was no disaster here. There was no pain or suffering. Everything was so simple and ordinary. It seemed like this was the most ordinary independent space. It was just the simplest independent space. As he looked at his surroundings, Lu Feng was at a loss. He didn't know what to do. However, this situation didn't last long. Soon enough, he recovered and clarity returned to his eyes. Lu Feng looked at his surroundings and exhaled softly. The 18th floor is actually so simple. It's actually such an indescribable place. This is really. He was currently in an endless starry sky. This was a starry sky world. This shouldn't have been anything special. However, there were two balls of sparkling light quietly flickering in this space. Lu Feng took a deep breath. He knew that all of the secrets of the trial by fire, all of the essence, lay within those two glowing spheres of light. The true secret must be contained within them. However, it was just that, could all the secrets be in these balls of light? Isn't this a bit too childish? Lu Feng let out a sigh of relief. With a single step, he crossed hundreds of millions of miles and arrived at the edge of the light sphere. He looked at one of the balls of light with a slightly confused look in his eyes. Lu Feng didn't know what this ball of light was. He didn't even know how to activate it. At this moment, all he could do was watch quietly. After a long time, Lu Feng seemed to feel a kind of calling. From these two light clusters there was actually a kind of unbreakable calling that came from them. After this call was born, it became even more intense, causing him to be unable to ignore it. Of course, this feeling didn't come from just one ball of light. Both balls of light were calling out to him. However, Lu Feng could clearly feel that the ball of light beside him was calling out to him even more intensely. Lu Feng took a deep breath. He didn't sense any danger from this. In the depths of his heart, he didn't feel that this was anything dangerous. Lu Feng had always believed in his own intuition, because he knew that his intuition was incomparably sharp. Countless times, his instincts had helped him. Therefore, after a moment of silence, Lu Feng decided to follow his instincts. Just as his arm was about to reach out and touch the ball of light, Lu Feng paused for a moment. He thought about it for a moment before he finally gritted his teeth and extended his arm. In an instant, countless pieces of information flooded his senses. Lu Feng's eyes widened, and kept widening. What appeared in his eyes was a kind of shock, a kind of surprise. He was really shocked and pleasantly surprised. Soon, the information was completely transmitted. At this moment, Lu Feng's eyes were still filled with disbelief. His voice trembled slightly as he took countless deep breaths to calm down the agitation in his heart. However, Lu Feng realized that all his efforts were in vain. He couldn't calm down at all, because the things that had appeared now were too precious, and they were too shocking to him. It's actually like this. It's actually like this. This is the origin, this is the mythical origin. This is the power of the origin that can transform my physical body and allow me to enter the mythical realm. Previously, when Lu Feng became a god, he had triggered the vastness of heaven and earth and triggered the blessings of time and space. At that time, the three mythical origins had already appeared. If Lu Feng had chosen, then he would have entered the mythical realm. However, he eventually gave up because he knew that if he chose the blessings of time and space with the mark of time and space, then his life would be like this. In the future, he had already lost the future that an emperor should have. However, what was in front of him was different, far different. This was the true mythical origin, the most primitive, the most powerful, and the purest mythical origin. It had no restrictions. Using it, there were no restrictions or side effects at all. But why is there such a ball of origin here? This shouldn't be. Lu Feng was really puzzled and even confused. However, he had to believe and admit it, because in his mind, the information had been clearly displayed. The blessings of the origin were indeed incomparably terrifying things. It was a mythical item that could make a mortal instantly become the supreme divine king. It was the pinnacle mythical item. However, the problem was that this pinnacle mythical item shouldn't exist in such a place. After all, those who could reach the final level were definitely incomparably heaven-defying monsters. It wasn't a dream for them to become the supreme divine king. It was simply within their reach. Therefore, this shouldn't be. Lu Feng was confused. However, at the next moment, he seemed to have thought of something and instantly understood everything. There was an indescribable feeling of shock in his eyes. Could it be that everything should be like this? The 3 Holy Lands, the 318 levels of the Trial Pagoda, where the 3 ultimate secrets lie. Could it be that the truth of everything is like this? This origin isn't to create an immortal king at all, because if an existence can reach the pinnacle of one place, it's highly likely that he can also reach the pinnacle of the other 2 places. That person's existence can ultimately obtain the 3 great origins. This is equivalent to instantly integrating the 3 great harmless origins. Under the circumstances of not harming their future, they can be molded into a truly invincible existence, an existence that can become the immortal Lord. Lu Feng was shocked and stunned. In fact, the 3 Holy Lands were actually one. The Trial Pagoda of the 3 places had to be completely integrated before it could be used. This was what was truly shocking. Not only could one obtain countless benefits by passing through the Trial Pagoda of the 3 places, but more importantly, one could obtain the 3 origins and become the overlord of the 3 eras in the 3 shattered realms. As he thought of this, Lu Feng's heart was constantly in shock. The 3 Holy Lands have 3 gates of heaven and earth, which are the crystallization of the 3 great black holes. They provide energy. Within the 3 Holy Lands there are also 3 Trial Pagoda. Their existence is to provide realms. Even if it's an ordinary person, after integration, he can enter the realm of the Overlord of the eras. All of this seems to have been prepared for a certain existence. Their fundamental intention is to quickly create an invincible existence. At this moment, Lu Feng thought of the phantom of the human emperor that he had seen in the ruins. His words were still vivid in Lu Feng's mind. He had once said that in the second universe, he, Lu Feng, would obtain an unprecedented opportunity to transform and improve rapidly. Now that he thought about it, in addition to the countless monstrous talents and geniuses, he was probably referring to something else. Thinking of this possibility, Lu Feng fell silent. He really did not know what to say. In the end, as he looked at it, Lu Feng laughed. He really laughed. I don't know if I'm his reincarnation, but I can be sure that my existence will surpass all of them. Even him is definitely not my end. I, Lu Feng, am the real invincible emperor. Since I'm the only one here, I'm the only one qualified to use these things. In that case, then I'll use them. Now Lu Feng was really in need of an increase in strength. He would not let go of any opportunity to improve his strength. Obviously, the things in front of him were the best opportunities for him to transform and ascend to the heavens in a single bound. Therefore, Lu Feng did not hesitate and decided to use them. It seems that after I leave this time, I'll have to go to the other 2 Holy Lands. Once I get all the origins, I'll be able to truly possess the power of the 33rd floor of the ultimate sky at any time. After all 3 mythological domains were shattered, it meant that after becoming an epic overlord, he would have the battle power of the 33rd floor of the ultimate sky. However, Lu Feng was different because he still had the 4th mythological taboo domain. He still had the battle power of the forbidden mythological domain. This was Lu Feng's advantage. Once all 4 mythological domains were shattered, he would have invincible battle power. He would really become the pinnacle existence, an existence comparable to the Emperor's battle power of the 33rd floor of the ultimate sky. At that time, I'll use the ultimate immortal technique, 1 billion mortal dust, 1 billion immortals. Then, in this world, except for my ancestor, the human king, who would be my opponent? Lu Feng, although he was not at the level of the divine king, at the final moment, he would become the number 1 killer in the universe without the human king. Since ancient times, below the divine king, I'll be the true number 1 killer. Thinking of this, Lu Feng could not help but feel slightly excited. However, he quickly suppressed these thoughts in the depths of his heart. It was because this was only his imagination. Moreover, the restrictions he faced were too great. However, with such hope, Lu Feng was really excited. After challenging the state, Lu Feng looked at the light ball in front of him. This light ball was filled with the mythological origin of the physical body. Without hesitation, he walked into it and began to absorb the mythological origin. Chapter 9:13. The process of absorbing mythical source energy was very simple, but it was also extremely complicated. This was a kind of torment, a painful torment, because this was the process of reconstructing one's physical body. In fact, this was in line with the essence of the 18th level of the trial tower. This was a trial process that was full of torture and pain. However, this kind of torture was already bearable for Lu Fenglai. He felt that this kind of pain was slightly worse than the torture on the 15th level. Therefore, his expression was still the same as before. The transformation was carried out continuously and accelerated continuously. Lu Feng could feel the aura of this origin constantly fusing into his body. Almost every tiny unit in his body was engraved with an indescribable mysterious mark. Lu Feng really couldn't believe the existence of this mark, because he had never seen such a mysterious mark before. This was even more mysterious than the Emperor's Path domain he had experienced and the forbidden mythical domain of combat power. His eyes were still full of clarity despite the endless pain. However, there was an indescribable strange light in Lu Feng's eyes at the moment. This wasn't something that Lu Feng could display. Instead, it was because his physical body had been completely transformed. Even his eyes had been engraved with an immortal mysterious mark. Powerful, powerful. Lu Feng had unknowingly activated the 3 invincible battle constitutions. His destructive battle body had reached the pinnacle, and the great demon body of the great demon true body's 5th level had reached the large success stage. At the final moment, the power of the world entwined around him. This was the world battle body that had fused with the world. Any one of the 3 great battle constitutions would become the pinnacle of the universe and become an invincible battle body in the endless space and time. However, the battle constitutions that Lu Feng displayed at the moment were all present at the same time. The degree of invincibility was vividly displayed at that moment. The 3 great battle constitutions constantly flashed and were constantly engraved with countless mysterious marks. At that moment, Lu Feng was so relaxed that it was as if he had experienced some kind of space-time travel. There were billions of auras alternating. Gradually, all the auras gradually disappeared and faded away. The endless light that enveloped Lu Feng also gradually disappeared. They were all absorbed by Lu Feng and integrated into his body, making Lu Feng even more powerful. Finally, when all the light disappeared, Lu Feng's eyes shone with a shocking light. It was a turbulent aura, an indescribable aura of shock. It's time. It's time. He had waited for endless years. Now it was time. With the power of billions, endless eternity, everything will be smelted into my body. Smelt my most powerful body, smelt my eternal monarch body. Shatter, shatter, shatter. The 3 great battle constitutions were shattering at the same time. The 3 great battle constitutions were absolutely invincible in the same realm, but at that moment, they were shattering at the same time and vanishing into nothingness. They were all smelted. With billions of years as the primitive foundation, with the destiny of time and space, and with the myth of origin as the furnace of power, he was smelting the most powerful eternal monarch body. This was crazy and terrifying. But Lu Feng was really doing it. He was really in the process of doing it. This was Lu Feng's inevitable course of action. It was also his crazy move, but it was also his helplessness. The existence of the 3 great battle constitutions made it difficult for anyone to surpass him. Unfortunately, the 3 great battle constitutions were ultimately just 3 great battle constitutions. They were not the only ones. There could only be one eternal monarch body. This meant that if Lu Feng still had 3 great battle constitutions, he would never be able to possess the eternal monarch body. Therefore, he had no choice but to do this. And this was Lu Feng's madness. Other people might give up 2 of them and choose one as the final battle constitution, but Lu Feng chose to shatter them. He wanted to smelt the 3 great battle constitutions into one. It had to be said that this was crazy to the extreme. If he succeeded, then Lu Feng's fleshly body would exceed anything imaginable. It would become the most powerful and invincible fleshly body in all of history, even in the immortal Devil Age. In fact, he even felt like he could compare to the fleshly body of millions upon millions of god spirits and countless immortal devils as bones. Of course, all of this was just Lu Feng's imagination and conjecture. However, if he couldn't do it, then it would always be a guess. Therefore, he did it. What I want is the most invincible body. What I need is a body that can bear my invincible power, so that I can continue to fight, so that I can continue to conquer. So, I can't fail, I can't fail. Lu Feng's strength was too strong. Just like the strength he displayed, it was far beyond his realm. If it wasn't for the fact that he had the strongest physical body, he wouldn't have been able to display such peerless strength. This was undoubtedly the saddest thing. Therefore, he chose this path. He chose to smelt everything and strengthen himself to be invincible. Of course, Lu Feng was also aware of the consequences. He clearly knew that if he failed this time, he would lose the hope of the future and the source of motivation to advance in the future. His invincible battle constitutions would all disappear. His 3 invincible battle constitutions would be completely damaged and would no longer exist. It could be said that the path Lu Feng chose this time was the most dangerous and the craziest one. If he succeeded, he would surpass the ancients and reach the pinnacle of history. He would be invincible and great. But if he failed, his physical body would disappear and he would lose the possibility of continuing to advance. However, if he didn't put in the effort, how could there be a return? He was only 30 years old, but he already had the strength he had now. Was this something that could be achieved by relying only on talent and strength? No, absolutely not. If that was the case, then he was at best a deity, an ordinary true god. He was also struggling to move forward like those ordinary geniuses. At best, he was equivalent to a peak divine realm expert. That was his limit at that time. But now, was he at that level? No. Now, he was only at his current level. He was already a divine realm expert. After he went out, it would only take a few moments for him to activate the invincible domain and enter the pinnacle of everything. At that time, he would be able to become an invincible existence below the Divine King even if he didn't use any of the sovereign path power. And all of this was achieved by relying on his endless battles, by relying on his crazy battles, by relying on the countless times of life and death, and by relying on the countless times of falling into depravity. Therefore, Lu Feng still chose to go crazy this time, because he really needed that invincible combat strength, crazy, continuous crazy, the most powerful peak, the support of endless power. Lu Feng would not choose to compromise in the face of anything. Therefore, even though his body was shattering, he was still not shaken at all. His heart had completely persevered. Therefore, despite the pain of his limbs being separated, Lu Feng still persisted. He persisted like crazy. Gradually, the world combat body was completely shattered and became an existence of nothingness. However, the power of the true essence of the world was still there. It was suspended in the air and existed quietly. After waiting for a long time, the destruction combat body, which had smelted the calamity of the universe and contained the true essence of destruction, also collapsed. Like the world combat body, it collapsed and became an illusory existence. It floated quietly in the air, flickering with endless sparkling light. It was extremely dazzling. At the last moment, the collapse continued. However, Lu Feng's last invincible combat body, which belonged to the great demon True Body, was still persevering and had not completely collapsed. This was an invincible and terrifying power. The essence of this power was incomparable to anything else. At the moment, this invincible combat body showed no signs of collapsing at all. Lu Feng still had to keep shattering it, so that his previous efforts would not be in vain. It could be said that he was really in extreme pain and discomfort at the moment. However, when he thought of the possibilities in the future, his bet this time, and what had already happened, Lu Feng could not give up. He could only continue to persevere. No, this is really not right. This feeling is really not right. This is not the aura of a calamity. Now it has completely changed. This seems to be a brand new kind of calamity. This kind of calamity feels more like a natural disaster. The previous aura was the aura of destruction, but now it was the aura of a heavenly tribulation. The two were completely different. There was no similarity at all. Therefore, everyone was really confused. They did not understand why there were suddenly two different kinds of aura. In the endless void, the two divine masters looked at each other in dismay. They seemed to have thought of something. There was a slight change in their expressions, and there was even a slight shock in their expressions. This is impossible. The two of them really could not believe that this was actually true. Such an aura of calamity is really powerful. It's really terrifying. It's restrained. It's the majesty of a king. This is an aura that only a king-level existence can trigger. What did Lu Feng do? How could he trigger a king-level calamity? Could it be that he is going to become a real king-level existence now? They were very familiar with such an aura. However, it was because of this familiarity that they were incomparably shocked. They were sure that this was the calamity that would only be triggered when a king-level existence was crowned. However, Lu Feng was only a peak true immortal. He was still very far away from being crowned a king-level existence. This was not right. It should not be. But this is really that kind of aura. There's no doubt about it. Why is this happening? Looking at the gradually forming calamity aura in the void, the two of them looked even more gloomy. Chapter 9:14. Finally, after countless years of continuous shattering, Lu Feng completely shattered the last shackle. The invincible great apocalyptic demon body was finally completely shattered and turned into a power of nothingness. Like the power of the other three great battle constitutions, it floated quietly in the air and became a kind of origin existence. At this moment, what was left of Lu Feng's body was really just an ordinary body. There was no power flowing on this body, nor was there any mysterious surging. With such a body, Lu Feng couldn't even unleash 10% of his strongest combat strength, let alone put up a fierce fight or use the ultimate immortal technique. Fragile. It was really too fragile. Lu Feng really felt this way at the moment. He knew that this was his last chance. If he couldn't succeed and complete the condensation of this battle constitution, then even if he had heaven-defying aptitude in the future, it would be impossible for him to succeed and become a pinnacle existence. Success or failure really depends on this one move. If I fail, then I will be beaten back to my original state. Any dreams will be a laughable joke. Lu Feng took a deep breath. As he looked at the origin power around him, his heart was in turmoil. In the next moment, he no longer hesitated. Lu Feng chose a real beginning. He chose his own extremes and chose to move forward bravely. Finally, he no longer suppressed any realm. At the moment, Lu Feng chose to improve and become stronger. He chose to sublimate. The existence of his physical body started to increase from 1 time to 2 times, 3 times, level up, continuously level up, without any restrictions, without any pauses in the process. Finally, after just a few moments, Lu Feng raised his physical body to the pinnacle. This was the pinnacle level below the monarch realm. A 10-fold increase in physical body strength had appeared. This was a 10-fold increase in physical body strength, which was known as the pinnacle of physical body strength below the monarch realm. However, this was still not enough. It was far from enough. This was because only by reaching 11-fold, which was the physical body of a monarch, could he instantly enter the pinnacle and possess the power to shatter the mythical forbidden domain of the physical body. Therefore, he still needed it. He still needed it. In an instant, another instant. Finally, it was shattered once again. Finally, everything was shattered. Lu Feng had succeeded. He had really succeeded. The barrier of the physical body, which belonged to the 11-fold increase, had disappeared. Lu Feng's physical body had really entered the 11-fold domain. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented power. Although his current physical body couldn't be considered his peak physical body, after all, it was only 11-fold increase in the most ordinary physical body. However, the mythical will contained in it made Lu Feng feel as if he was in the domain of the Divine King at all times. This was a feeling that he could only experience in the forbidden domain of combat power. However, it was different from the combat strength taboo mythological domain. In the combat strength taboo mythological domain, he had to constantly endure endless torment and pain. Therefore, he was unable to focus on such a powerful state of being enhanced to the extreme. After all, once he entered that domain, it would represent a true earth-shattering battle monarch realm. And the existence of the forbidden domain of combat power had a limited time. He had to ensure that every minute was used in the most correct way. Therefore, he couldn't experience too much at all. But now it was different. It was completely different because in such a domain, Lu Feng could really achieve eternal time. He could completely experience this extreme feeling. It was really comfortable. Lu Feng couldn't help but tremble in his heart. But at the next moment, he opened his eyes. Lu Feng knew that now wasn't the time. It was far from the time. It was just that although such an ordinary physical body had entered the forbidden domain of the physical body, its strength was still limited. It was far from being able to support his terrifying output. Therefore, everything wasn't over. It was far from over. At the next moment, Lu Feng eliminated all hesitation. He finally chose to continue going crazy. No matter what the future is, no matter how dangerous and painful I have to experience, I absolutely can't give up. The people I protect are waiting for me. In the future, all the living beings in this space and time are waiting for my existence. They are waiting for me to become stronger. How can I give up? At the moment, Lu Feng entered the domain of the Divine King and finally felt a tremor in his soul. It was a sublimation of his spirit. He had already gradually understood, fully aware of the situation. The existence of an emperor isn't about strength, suppression, and the worship of millions of living beings. It isn't about having endless glory and wealth. The existence of a true emperor is actually to protect those loyal to him, to protect those loyal to the people, and to protect all the living beings under his jurisdiction. This is a true emperor. This is the true essence of an emperor. At this moment Lu Feng smiled. He looked at the 3 most invincible physical body origins around him, and smiled. What I have to do is to protect. Because I am a true emperor, I have to protect everything that I need to protect. In an instant, Lu Feng gently waved his arm. At that moment, the origin power of the world started to pour into Lu Feng's body frantically. Back then, in order to condense this world battle body, Lu Feng had gone through a narrow escape. He had also gone through endless pain and torment before he had finally completed it. Now, when Lu Feng fused with it again, he would have to go through that pain and torment again. This time, Lu Feng's endurance was even more terrifying. Therefore, when he faced the pain of the world battle body fusing with his body, he only frowned and his body trembled slightly. However, his eyes were indifferent. Gradually, the power of the world appeared in his body, the true essence of the world, and the existence of the world's origin. After entering the Divine King's forbidden mythological domain, the existence of the world didn't matter anymore. After all, the Divine King could easily crush the world. However, this world battle body was really unparalleled. It was a battle body, not a power origin. Therefore, this eternal monarch body with 11 times the power of the world was definitely one of the greatest battle bodies since ancient times. However, was this enough? Not enough, not enough. How could it be enough? However, how could this kind of power be enough for his terrifying power? Therefore, Lu Feng still needed even more power. Taking a deep breath, Lu Feng looked to his side, where there was another kind of physical power that was filled with the essence of destruction. A smile gradually formed on his face. The second one should also fuse with my body. After all, I still need it. I am not at the peak yet. I am still not at the peak yet. If I am not at the peak, my body will not be able to bear my invincible power. In the future, I will be fighting against billions of calamities. Therefore, I cannot allow my power to stagnate. The smile on Lu Feng's face became even crazier. As he waved his arm for the second time, the power of the true essence of destruction in the void started to surge wildly and enter his body in the most violent manner possible. Lu Feng had obtained this destruction battle body when he had made a breakthrough in the ancient ruins. At that time, he had relied on this destruction battle body to dominate for a period of time. This destruction battle body was actually Lu Feng's second invincible battle body. Now, it had returned again, which made Lu Feng understand the pain of the past even more. However, compared to the first time, it was obviously more painful this time. In fact, the degree of pain was much, much greater than before. This time, his body had fused with the power of the world. When the destruction entered his body, it would fuse with the world. Otherwise, his battle bodies would never be able to harmonize. Therefore, the process of fusion was actually equivalent to the sum of the pain he had experienced when the world battle body and the destruction battle body were born. Lu Feng's soul was also trembling in pain this time. His expression could no longer remain indifferent. At the moment, he was also trembling endlessly. It was normal for his body to tremble, because this was the formation of a new battle body. However, Lu Feng's pupils were also marked with pain. He was really in too much pain. Finally, during the process of fusion, Lu Feng couldn't help but let out a mournful roar. This painful roar only appeared for a moment, because at the last moment, Lu Feng still managed to hold it in and forcefully persevered. After an indeterminate amount of time, Lu Feng's face finally calmed down. He had finally calmed down at this moment. Lu Feng was still trembling all over. If there were only two types of pain, he could still face it with a smile and a strong stance. However, when the two types of pain were born at the same time, he really could not bear it. After all, when the two types of pain and torture came at the same time, it was definitely not 1 + 1 = 2. Strictly speaking, it was definitely multiplied. Lu Feng kept gasping for breath. After a long time, he finally got control of his trembling body. Looking at the last type of body, Lu Feng knew that the most painful part was about to come. Compared to all the previous ones, the last one was the most extreme pain. The existence of the devil true body is actually the real process of my life. It is the foundation of all my transformations in this life. Going through the formation of the great devil true body is actually experiencing all the pain of the past again. It is set up so that the pain will be completely superimposed, countless times of pain superimposed. This kind of pain was really indescribable. In the past, Lu Feng had experienced countless types of pain. However, there were two types of pain that were the most painful. Back in the massacre abyss, he had gone through hundreds of millions of life and death situations that had destroyed Lu Feng's soul and destroyed his will. The second time was on the 17th floor of the Trial Pagoda, where he had experienced the ravaging torment of power. Both types of pain were the most painful. It was hard to tell which was better. However, Lu Feng knew that when he merged with the third type of body, the Great Devil True Body, he would experience the most painful experience. This would be the most painful experience. It would far surpass the pain he had experienced before. Hesitation. At the moment, Lu Feng was actually really hesitating. He was really hesitating. However, this hesitation only lasted for a moment. In the next moment, Lu Feng was shaken. He stretched out his arm and finally waved it. In an instant, endless pain came. Lu Feng let out a roar that shook the heavens and earth. It was a roar of pain that made even space and time tremble. If anyone could hear this, they would really be unable to bear it and collapse. After all, such a painful roar could really penetrate deep into one's soul. It was really unbearable. The pain was still intensifying. Gradually, Lu Feng thought of the past. In the past, when he had seen Lu Rong, Lu Qing and the others in front of his villa in the Cymbidium, the humiliation they had inflicted on him had been a fatal blow. At the time, it had been very painful. However, Lu Feng had persevered and successfully entered the first level of the Great Devil True Body. He had successfully completed the initial stage of the transformation. Now, that kind of pain was really nothing. However, when the pain of forming the Great Devil True Body and the Great Devil True Body was added, it was completely different. Chapter 9:15. Lu Feng's memories of his past life and death were still fresh in his mind, as if they had just happened yesterday. That kind of pain was still vivid in his mind, making him think about it all the time. However, that was all in the past. It was his great past. Step by step, he had gone from an ant-like existence to a great realm. He had become an existence that countless creatures looked up to. He had become a supreme emperor among the younger generation. His strength was his persistence. I will never give up, because there is no such thing as giving up for me. I am an emperor, a guardian emperor. I want to protect all the people who love me. I want them to not wither away, even in the face of any disaster. I want them to know that I, Lu Feng, am standing in front of them. I stand before them. I am eternal, I am the one and only, I am the greatest existence. I, Lu Feng, will protect them. Endless pain assaulted Lu Feng, making him wish he was dead. However, he didn't care about this. Although this kind of pain was really unbearable, Lu Feng knew that his heart was firm. This was tempering his body, his soul, and his willpower. Although it was painful, Lu Feng had to persevere, because he had a reason to persevere. Lu Feng took a deep breath. A resplendent splendor appeared in his eyes. This was a radiance called determination. Lu Feng had broken through one calamity after another and faced one madness after another. He had never given up. He had never forgotten. He was Lu Feng. He was the emperor of billions of creatures, Lu Feng. How could I be afraid? The corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. It wasn't crazy, it wasn't sharp. At this moment, his smile fused with a myriad of emotions, just like a benevolent expression. In the past, he had faced martialists head-on and suppressed them when he was only a mid-level warrior. He had faced hundreds of millions of martialists when he had been a high-level warrior. He had chosen to fight alone against the 5 great massacre emperors. Time after time of torment, time after time of unimaginable experience, It made him understand that he was not weaker than others. In his life, no one could suppress him. The most painful state struck him, causing Lu Feng's soul to tremble. The depths of his pupils lost their luster. However, this did not scare him in the slightest, because he was still Lu Feng. This kind of breakthrough was the greatest pain he had ever experienced. It surpassed the pain he had experienced in the 17th level. It surpassed the pain he had experienced in the true abyss of slaughter, the pain he had experienced billions of times of life and death. However, Lu Feng wasn't afraid. This was because he knew that there was a type of pain known as the pain of the soul. It was an existence that was billions of times more unbearable than this. If he failed, then that pain would forever linger around him. Lu Feng didn't want to experience that. Therefore, he faced it bravely and courageously. Great Devil True Body, world-destroying Great Devil Body, it's time to merge. It's time for him to complete the final and eternal transformation. In an instant, the endless power of the Great Devil True Essence appeared. It actually merged with the source energy of the world-destroying Great Devil Body and crazily entered Lu Feng's body. At this moment, on Lu Feng's body, shocking and unprecedented brilliance appeared. The tribulation has formed. I can feel that this is the tribulation of a king. There is actually someone who has taken the step to shatter the shackles and become a supreme immortal king at this moment. Who is it? Who is it? Countless people glanced back and forth, wanting to sense who had completed such a shocking transformation at such a moment, breaking away from the category of mortals and becoming a truly great person. Unfortunately, no matter how they searched, they still couldn't find it. Many people were puzzled, endlessly puzzled. Finally, someone seemed to have thought of something. They looked at the training pagoda, and their eyes flickered with astonishment. Could it be him? But how could it be him? As he muttered to himself, the surrounding people were also slightly at a loss after hearing his words. A moment later, they seemed to have thought of something and also thought of the same thing. Their eyes were also filled with endless amazement. They looked at each other, and they saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. No, it can't be. He shouldn't. It really shouldn't be, because when he entered the 18th level of the Tower of Trials, he was only a peak true immortal. Even if he had a breakthrough, he was still too far away from the Immortal King realm. He shouldn't be able to come into contact with the Immortal King realm. This shouldn't be, or rather, it's absolutely impossible. However, other than him, no one could think of anyone else who could have a breakthrough. Countless people looked at each other, and they fell into shock and silence in the void. The two immortal masters looked at each other, and in the end, they both fell silent. In their eyes, there was shock and a bitter smile. Finally, the guide seemed to be unable to bear it, and he sighed softly. This Lu Feng, as expected, he really is. He said a lot, but he couldn't say the adjectives he wanted, because even the Immortal Master level guide didn't know what to say. He sighed deeply, and there was an incomprehensible light in his eyes. The Sovereign Immortal Master stretched out his arm, and gently raised it, then put it down again. Seeing this scene, the guide's eyes were filled with endless complexity. He knew that his senior brother had a habit, and that was when he was shocked, he would always stretch out his arm and ponder. And now, he had stretched out his arm, but put it down again. This proved that in his senior brother's heart, he really didn't know what to say or do. He was really at a loss, and he didn't know what to do anymore. Exhaling deeply, the Supreme Immortal Master murmured to himself, "This Lu Feng, there's really no solution. In countless space-time, there has never been a monstrous genius who is as heaven-defying as him. I can be sure that he hasn't really entered the Immortal King realm. The fundamental reason for everything is because he broke the taboo, and has 11 times the limit. He has the qualifications to enter the Immortal King realm. Possessing the power of an Immortal King at the true Immortal realm, this Lu Feng, a bitter smile, it was really a bitter smile. An immortal king was an immortal king, and there was an obvious difference between an immortal king and an existence below the immortal king realm. This was an extreme barrier that no one could break. Perhaps in other realms, there was still the possibility of challenging someone of a higher realm, but in the immortal king realm, such a thing would never happen. Because for an immortal king this was simply a joke, the most ridiculous tragedy. Even a heaven-defying Hunyuan golden immortal would never be able to fight against an immortal king without the support of the immortal king realm. This was a restriction that no other realm had before. And now this Lu Feng is going to break this taboo. He is just a peak true immortal, but he can really fight against an immortal king through the support of the immortal king realm. He is truly unparalleled throughout the ages, shocking the world. At this moment, any words were powerless. All that could be said was these few words: the tribulation had accumulated to an indescribable level. Lu Feng had already cut off all his senses, but even so, his soul was in indescribable pain. This time, the torture was countless times more painful than before, but this time, Lu Feng was not shaken. There was not even the slightest change. He was persevering. He had already entered an indescribable level. The thoughts in his heart made Lu Feng's perseverance have a fundamental meaning. Time continued to pass. In the outside world, the aura of the tribulation had become so dense that it had become tangible. Moreover, the strength of this tribulation was unprecedented and terrifying. But in the face of this, Lu Feng was still the same as before. He had completely persevered. 7 days, a whole 7 days. Under this kind of torment, even a moment felt like an eternity. However, Lu Feng had persevered for a whole 7 days under such circumstances. This was a miracle, and a sacred relic. When the 7 days came and he finally experienced the most extreme pain, Lu Feng's eyes were full of fatigue. He was really tired. However, what appeared in the depths of his tired eyes was a burning fighting spirit and a kind of spiritual perseverance. The corners of Lu Feng's mouth slowly curled up into a smile. At this moment, Lu Feng could not even stand properly. Finally, he sat down on the ground. All of his powers were recovering rapidly. That invincible body of his was blooming continuously. However, Lu Feng did not pay much attention to this, because the pain he had experienced was too exaggerated. He simply could not think of anything else. For the first time, Lu Feng did not continue persevering while in a state of consciousness during a battle. Instead, he chose to rest. His eyes shut slightly. Lu Feng really could not hold on any longer. He did not even have time to feel any changes in his body. Lu Feng had already sunk into a kind of dormant state 3 days, a whole 3 days. Lu Feng had never relaxed like this before. 3 days was really too little compared to the time he had spent cultivating. It could not even compare to the time he had spent on the test after entering this place. However, these 3 days of rest were very extravagant for Lu Feng. Finally, Lu Feng woke up slowly. The first thing he did when he woke up was not to feel the terror of this brand new transformed body, nor to think about the future Lu Feng. Lu Feng chose to be sluggish. A faint sluggishness. Finally, a faint smile appeared on his face. I am Lu Feng, Emperor Lu Feng. I've finally succeeded again. Once again, I've returned from the endless. Once again, I've found my way. His eyes were full of wisdom, and he was no longer confused. Countless rays of light flickered, making Lu Feng's calm eyes look even more noble and honorable than before. He slowly stood up from the ground and let out a long sigh of relief. His expression was calm. It's time to feel the terror of my invincible body. The moment he said that, Lu Feng's body transformed. There were no more shocking visions or luxurious decorations. Although his body looked ordinary, if one took a closer look, they would find that he had sunk into a kind of madness. It was a feeling that he could see anything and everything within this body. This body did not seem to be a physical body at all. It was a world, a furnace of destruction, an eternal engraving. Lu Feng slowly closed his eyes. At that moment, he raised his arms slightly and clenched them gently. At that moment, the whole world seemed to tremble. Even time and space were trembling. In an instant, his tightly shut eyes opened. At that moment, the endless, gorgeous light seemed to be able to penetrate the world and time. Lu Feng looked at his own hands and felt his own greatness. He smiled, a gentle smile. Is this the ultimate body? Is this the brand new final constitution after refining everything? It's really too powerful and terrifying. Chapter 9:16. Truly, it was too powerful, too indescribable. Even Lu Feng himself was unable to describe how terrifying and unparalleled his battle body was. With a light step, he entered a distant place. In the primal universe, this step was a step that crossed countless space-time. This was faster than traveling through space-time. However, this was nothing to Lu Feng, because he was only using the power of his physical body to move. It was just an ordinary walk, but it was countless times faster than traveling through space-time. After all, traveling through space-time required tearing through the void to connect to another place. Now, he merely lifted his leg, took a step, and arrived there. Terrifying, extreme. This was truly invincible. I feel that just by relying on my physical body, I can already destroy a galaxy with a single punch. One punch, just one punch of his physical body, could destroy a galaxy. This was Lu Feng's confidence and madness. Similarly, I have a King Path physical body that is 11 times stronger, but my physical body is above all other physical bodies. Just the existence of my physical body alone, I even feel that I can confront the Time Overlord head-on. Of course, it's just an ordinary Time Overlord. But this is enough to shock the world. This was really enough to shock the world. Because the existence of the Time Overlord was not something that could be compared to anything else. The Time Overlord represented that he had entered 2 great domains and possessed 2 invincible taboo mythological domains. And Lu Feng could collide with the Time Overlord with just 1 domain. From this, it could be seen how monstrous his physical body was. Now, I can truly become the Divine King without any time limit. I can become the time immortal venerable within a certain period of time. He could enter the physical body mythological domain at any time. And such an unprecedentedly powerful physical body was enough to support him to enter it without any restrictions, without any unbearable situation. In addition to the physical body taboo mythical domain, Lu Feng had another type of domain, which was the combat power taboo mythical domain. With his fleshly body and combat prowess, he would become a true overlord of time. Furthermore, with his unprecedented ultimate battle constitution and his combat prowess, which was considered taboo even in the taboo realm, he would definitely be able to confront a great circle overlord of time head-on. Immortal Venerable Lin Long, Immortal Venerable Tianqiong. Lu Feng can also temporarily achieve. The only thing that Lu Feng regretted was that his combat power was in the taboo mythological domain. This was because entering the battle prowess forbidden mythological domain would deplete not only his physical body but also his soul. Although he had become more powerful, his soul was still limited. He couldn't support the consumption of his soul for too long. When I go to the other 2 holy lands and enter the training pagoda to complete my cultivation, then my soul will truly be invincible. At that time, I will have 3 domains and be comparable to any overlord of the 3rd epoch. My combat prowess will be above the 30th heaven. The combat prowess of the 30th heaven was almost invincible. When he was done, he would have to enter the ultimate heaven of the 33rd layer. His ultimate heaven of the 33rd layer would be more powerful than anyone else's ultimate heaven. It could be said that he would be truly invincible. At that time, with my invincible physical body, the great incarnation of Tong Tian Futu, my invincible cultivation technique, and my invincible Emperor Dao domain, my combat prowess in the ultimate heaven of the 33rd layer will surpass the limit of the Emperor. Since ancient times, except for the 8 supreme sovereigns of the primordial immortal devil era, the human king ancestor, the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors and Shakyamuni Buddha, no one else is stronger than me. It won't be long. It really won't be long. I, Lu Feng, will enter such a domain. I will be truly invincible for an era. Lu Feng took a deep breath and calmed his turbulent heart. Then, he focused his attention on the flickering second ball of light in front of him. Actually, what called to him the most wasn't the ball of light that had fused with the source of his physical body, but the second ball of light in front of him. Lu Feng didn't know what the second ball of light contained. However, he knew that it was something that had a lot to do with him. At this moment, Lu Feng's lips curled into a perfect smile. Without hesitation, he reached out his hand and delved deep into the ball of light. Just like the first ball of light, countless pieces of information were transmitted from it. The appearance of these pieces of information allowed Lu Feng to instantly understand what was contained within them. Lu Feng's lips, which had been curled up a moment ago, were now completely flat. Lu Feng was completely and utterly dumbfounded. What is contained in this ball of light is actually it. It's actually, Futu. It was Futu. Lu Feng already knew that the power that existed in his consciousness space wasn't actually Futu. Its name should be Futu. This was what Lu Feng had learned from the eternal immortal master in the land of sealed demons. However, he didn't know much more. He didn't understand it at all. However, at this moment, Lu Feng finally understood everything. The corners of his mouth curled into an indescribable smile. What I thought before was indeed correct. In this trial tower, which belonged to the 3 greatest holy lands left behind from the immortal and demon era, what existed in the 3 greatest cores of the 3 great holy lands couldn't be simple. It couldn't be just the 3 great mythological sources. To those monstrous geniuses, mythological origins weren't much at all. Based on the existence of the 3 great holy lands and the fact that no one had ever set foot on the 18th floor of the trial tower, it might make sense if it contained the secrets of the supreme ruler. However, that was all it would make sense. However, what it contained was the power of the 3 great mythological sources. Compared to their status, it was far too inferior. Back then, Lu Feng had been confused. All this shouldn't have happened. He had found a reason to convince himself. However, now that he felt the second ball of light, he finally understood that the so-called mythological source was actually just a dispensable subsidiary. The truly great and honorable thing that was worthy of existing until now was actually this ball of light. This was the foundation, the true essence of everything. Lu Feng took a deep breath. He couldn't suppress his joy anymore. Futu, this is the origin of Futu. From the information he received, Lu Feng already knew and understood everything clearly. The origin of Futu was the true core existence of Futu. Once he obtained the origin, his Empyrean Futu would truly manifest. This is 1/3 of the origin. Once I obtain the complete origin, then I will truly possess the most complete origin energy. I am going to truly summon it out. The Empyrean Futu had always existed in Lu Feng's consciousness space. No matter what Lu Feng thought of, he couldn't manifest it in reality. Up until now, Lu Feng had believed that Futu was just a manifestation and not the true existence of Futu. However, he now knew that the reason he couldn't summon it was because he hadn't obtained the origin. Once I obtain the complete origin and summon the Empyrean Futu, no one will be able to resist me then. The Empyrean Futu was the Futu that the eternal immortal master had mentioned. What a great being that was! What an extreme existence that was! It was a legendary level 14 artifact that surpassed the Supreme Ruler's level 13 artifact. It was the ultimate symbol of greatness. If he summoned its true form, he would truly be able to suppress everything. Lu Feng took a deep breath. Without any hesitation, he walked into the origin. If there was anything in this world that Lu Feng didn't have to worry about, it would be the existence of Futu. Only Futu was the existence that he trusted the most. It was the only thing that he could truly rest assured about. This was because, from the very beginning, he had relied on the Empyrean Futu to complete his transformation. It could be said that without the Empyrean Futu, there wouldn't be the current Lu Feng. Therefore, Lu Feng could be filled with suspicion and doubt about everything, but he couldn't do the same for the Empyrean Futu, because this was where his essence lay. Now, he had finally gotten close to it. He finally had the chance to know its existence. Absorption was different from the torturous fusion. This time, there wasn't any turbulence. Everything was completed in an instant. Lu Feng could sense that the origin contained in this light had instantly entered the depths of his soul and his consciousness space. In an instant, it had completely fused with his soul and his Empyrean Futu. Lu Feng really couldn't wait to enter and see the Empyrean Futu in his heart. However, he didn't do that, because Lu Feng knew that now wasn't the time. When he entered the Empyrean Futu, the 5th floor would definitely open. Then, he would enter and see the next part of history. This was something that Lu Fenglai was really excited about. As he looked at his surroundings, the 18 floors of the Trial Pagoda gradually disappeared. Lu Feng had already received the information, so he didn't think that this was a big deal. However, as he watched the illusions around him gradually become transparent and eventually disappear, he still felt a little strange. After all the changes had really been completed in an instant. Chapter 9:17. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at the gradually fading trial tower. They had no idea what was going on. They were really at a loss. What exactly is this? These people really had no idea what was going on. The Holy Land's trial tower had existed since ancient times and had never changed. It was the core secret of the Holy Land. It was the eternal symbol of the Holy Land. However, it was gradually fading away before everyone's eyes. It was gradually disappearing. Endless dark clouds covered the entire sky, shaking the entire world. However, the existence of these dark clouds did not attract the slightest bit of attention. This was because, for them, although the dark clouds of calamity were rare, they had more or less seen them before. Moreover, they had seen them more than once. However, the disappearance of the 18th level of the trial tower was something that no one had ever thought of. No one could imagine it. It was gradually disappearing before their eyes. It had completely disappeared. As for Lu Feng, he just quietly existed in the sky. He was strangely deep and strangely calm. Everyone's gazes were focused on Lu Feng. They were deep in thought, pondering over the possible issues and problems that might arise. Finally, the trial tower became completely transparent and disappeared completely. Lu Feng was the only one left standing between the heavens and the earth. Could it be that the trial tower will disappear once the 18th level is passed? Could this be the essence of the trial tower? Everything might be like this. Or maybe this is the truth. Sighs, endless sighs. After everyone sighed, they fell silent. They looked at Lu Feng in the sky again with an indescribable expression. Next, the real exciting part will begin. I wonder how this Emperor Lu Feng is going to deal with this supreme calamity. Everyone's eyes were filled with an indescribable expression. Lu Feng had already created history, a miracle. He had actually succeeded, a feat that not even the emperors of the 5 ultimate kings had been able to accomplish. He had relied on his own power to shatter all the taboos, to overcome all the tribulations, to enter the heaven-span pagoda. This was a magnificent feat, it was a miracle. Just as everyone was waiting quietly for Lu Feng's return, they felt the calamity. At this moment, they were certain that the calamity belonged to Lu Feng. Now, Lu Feng's realm was clearly visible to them. Lu Feng had indeed broken through. Entering the realm of celestial immortals was enough to shock everyone, especially Lin Yu and the others. However, that was all. They were not shocked to the point of madness. Lu Feng's breakthrough only meant that he had obtained some benefits and had a heaven-defying aptitude. However, the existence of the king's calamity was a little inexplicable. How could he trigger the king's calamity when he became a celestial immortal? This shouldn't be. Could it be that Lu Feng's progress is so shocking that the origin of the world can't tolerate it and wants to forcibly destroy and suppress him? That was what everyone was thinking. That was the only thought that everyone had. Perhaps this was the only thought in everyone's mind. In the void, the two immortal masters walked out. They could also sense Lu Feng's condition. Moreover, as immortal masters, as existences who had once faced the king's tribulation, they knew better how dangerous Lu Feng was at this moment. Looking at Lu Feng, who was slowly opening his eyes with an indifferent expression, the two immortal masters were silent for a moment. Then they spoke. Lu Feng, you can't completely bear the power of this calamity. So, you should step back. I'll help you to crush this calamity. During the tribulation, no one could easily crush the calamity. No one could crush it for them. However, there was an exception to everything. The one who spoke was the Sovereign Immortal Master. The Sovereign Immortal Master had already stepped into the ultimate heaven of the 32nd level. Even in the primordial immortal devil era, he was an absolute hero. He was an invincible character who suppressed heaven and earth. If he wanted to, it wouldn't be impossible for him to take Lu Feng's place and shatter this calamity. Of course, if he wanted to crush it, he would have to waste a lot of energy and pay a huge price. However, Lu Feng's existence was too important. At this moment, he couldn't just watch Lu Feng fall like this. Therefore, he had no choice but to step in. Looking at Lu Feng, who was unmoved in the void, a complicated look flashed across the Sovereign Immortal Master's eyes. Finally, he sighed softly and said slowly, Lu Feng, I know that you've broken the eternal shackles in the celestial immortal realm. You can enter the legendary realm and become an immortal king realm existence. However, you relied on breaking the immortal king realm to enter the legendary realm. Therefore, you can't be considered a true immortal king realm existence. You can't possibly control that invincible power. Moreover, even if you can control that kind of power, you might not be able to survive this calamity. Therefore, you should rest in peace. You should give up. Hearing this, Lu Feng still didn't react. However, the disciples below, those monstrous disciples, those supreme immortal kings hidden in the void, and those old immortal venerables were all stunned. They were completely stunned. What did the Sovereign Immortal Master just say? He said that this Lu Feng, the new Emperor Lu Feng, has broken the shackles, and entered the legendary realm? This is not a joke, right? This isn't a joke, right? How is this possible? How is this possible? He's just a celestial immortal. He's just a celestial immortal. As a celestial immortal, how is it possible for him to enter the legendary realm? This shouldn't be. Countless people were stunned and at a loss. They didn't know what to say. At this moment, they finally understood why such a calamity had been born in the void. A calamity that belonged to a king had been born. So, he has broken the forbidden realm of the immortal king. No wonder such a calamity that belongs to a king would appear. No wonder, it's like this. Everyone was looking at Lu Feng. They were thinking and doubting Lu Feng's choice. They really didn't know what kind of choice Lu Feng would make in the end. As if he had sensed everyone's attention, a ripple finally appeared on Lu Feng's calm face. It was a faint smile, a smile that was fused with an invincible belief and an indomitable aura. His smile was so indifferent. I am Lu Feng. It was just a few simple words. Without saying anything else, Lu Feng looked at the void and the endless calamity cloud. Apart from the 19 people from the Yellow Spring continent and the 2 immortal masters, everyone else was puzzled. Because they didn't know what kind of existence Lu Feng was. The Lu Feng they saw was none other than the freakish genius who had destroyed the portals of heaven and earth, acquired the crystallization of power, and then proceeded to the 18th level, creating the Ionic God Relic. They only knew this. They only knew how monstrous and terrifying Lu Feng was. They didn't know anything else. They really didn't know anything. Silence, endless silence. The 2 immortal masters were also silent. They already understood the meaning of Lu Feng's words from Lu Feng's words. They understood what Lu Feng was trying to say. Lu Feng said, "I am Lu Feng." These were simple words, but the meaning behind them was abnormally complicated. Of course, it was also abnormally simple. I am Lu Feng. I am Emperor Lu Feng. I am ancient and brilliant. I am great in history. I am invincible in the younger generation. Even those ultimate kings are no match for me. How can I be afraid? How can I be afraid of this calamity? Therefore, I will not be afraid. I will not retreat. I will face it myself. Because I am Emperor Lu Feng. This was the most sincere expression in Lu Feng's words. It was the most complete meaning. In the next moment, the 2 immortal masters sighed and withdrew all their power. They looked at Lu Feng quietly, waiting for the final result. "Senior brother, what should we do?" The guide had already transmitted his voice. He didn't know what to do. Hearing this, the Supreme Immortal Master fell silent. Then, a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Lu Feng's existence is too important. No matter what, we can't let anything happen to him. Therefore, if he really can't withstand it, then we should take action. Although the power of this calamity will really erupt after he triggers it, even if you and I work together, we might not be able to withstand it. However, we can't let anything happen to Lu Feng. When the time comes, even if it means triggering the foundation of this sacred ground, we have to do it. Hearing this, the guide fell silent. Finally, he nodded his head gently. Everything was indeed so. Now that the calamity had yet to truly descend, if they took action, or if they paid a certain price, they could shatter this calamity. However, once Lu Feng really triggered it, then this calamity would be indescribably powerful. It would be truly terrifying. If they took action at that time, the obstruction would be incomparably huge. However, they could only wait until then, because Lu Feng's words had already proved and made it very clear. He didn't need any help. He was Lu Feng. He didn't need anyone else. He was Lu Feng, the Emperor Lu Feng. He had to rely on himself to complete all of this. Let's hope that we can end this when the time comes. The 2 immortal masters raised their spirits at the same time. They were waiting for Lu Feng to encounter an accident. Then, they would take action and help Lu Feng withstand everything. Looking at the calamity in the void, Lu Feng smiled. In the next moment, his battle constitution appeared. The ultimate battle constitution, the invincible ultimate battle constitution, had completely appeared. It was plain, ordinary, and didn't even have any extravagance. Compared to those physiques that had an 11-fold enhancement, Lu Feng's current physique was too ordinary. Many people were puzzled. If it weren't for the 11-fold enhancement and the aura of a king, these people would really think that Lu Feng hadn't entered the ultimate realm. However, unlike these geniuses and monsters, in the eyes of the real kings, the immortal kings, immortal venerables, and the 2 immortal masters, there was a kind of shock and madness in their eyes. This physique. So terrifying, so invincible. Is this the physique of an emperor? Is this the invincible physique of Emperor Lu Feng? No wonder, no wonder. No wonder he dared to look directly at that terrifying calamity. No wonder they dared to face that terrifying calamity. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.